Are you ready to fall asleep? With 100 surprising facts about growing up in the 1950s. Let's begin. 1. Suburban boom and Levittown homes. The 1950s witnessed an unprecedented suburban explosion, with Levittown becoming America's symbol of affordable housing. These mass-produced communities offered young families the dream of homeownership for under $8,000. Built by William Levitt, these cookie-cutter Cape Cods featured 2 bedrooms, modern appliances, and quarter-acre lots. Veterans benefited from low-interest loans, making the move from cramped city apartments irresistible. Tree-lined streets sprouted seemingly overnight, transforming farmland into neighborhood developments. Critics called them monotonous, but for families, they represented progress, stability, and the quintessential American dream of a house with a white picket fence. 2. Baby boom and large family life. Between 1946 and 1964, 76 million babies were born, creating the legendary baby boom generation. Families with 4, 5, or even 6 children became commonplace. Mothers typically stayed home managing bustling households while fathers commuted to work. Chaos reigned cheerfully. Multiple children sharing bathrooms, endless loads of laundry, and dinner tables filled with lively chatter. Large families meant hand-me-down clothes, shared toys, and built-in playmates. Sunday drives required station wagons. Despite tight budgets and cramped spaces, this era celebrated large families as signs of prosperity and optimism about America's future. 3. Children's chores and allowances. 50s children learned responsibility through household chores. Boys mowed lawns, took out trash, and washed cars, while girls helped with dishes, dusting, and setting tables. These weren't optional. Work was expected before play. Parents believed chores built character and prepared children for adulthood. In return, kids received weekly allowances ranging from 25 cents to $1, depending on age and tasks completed. This system taught money management and the value of earning. Children saved their coins in piggy banks, carefully planning purchases. Allowances weren't handouts. They were compensation for contributing to the family unit, instilling a work ethic that defined a generation. 4. Popular children's board games. Game nights brought 50s families together around coffee tables nationwide. Monopoly taught capitalism and strategy, while Scrabble expanded vocabularies. Clue challenged young detectives to solve mysteries in Colonel Mustard's mansion. Candyland delighted younger children with its colorful path to sweet victory. Sorry taught both competition and sportsmanship through its apologetic gameplay. Checkers and chess remained timeless classics. These games required no electricity, just imagination, patience, and family interaction. Siblings argued over rules, parents refereed disputes, and everyone learned about winning gracefully and losing with dignity. Board games weren't just entertainment. They were social education wrapped in fun, creating cherished memories. 5. First, frozen TV dinners. In 1953, Swanson revolutionized American dining by introducing frozen TV dinners. These aluminum trays contained compartmentalized meals, typically turkey, cornbread dressing, peas, and sweet potatoes that heated in 25 minutes. Priced at 98 cents, they promised convenience for busy housewives and became instant sensations. Families could eat while watching television, a novelty that transformed mealtime rituals. The dinners represented modernity and technological progress, though nutritionists later questioned their value. Children loved the novelty, mothers appreciated the simplicity. By decade's end, millions of TV dinners sold annually, cementing their place in American culture as symbols of the atomic age's efficiency. 6. Families eating together at dinner. Despite TV dinner innovations, traditional family dinners remained sacred in most 1950s households. Each evening, families gathered around dining tables for home-cooked meals. Father sat at the head, mother served from the kitchen, and children recounted their day's adventures. Dinner conversations covered school activities, neighborhood news, and life lessons. Television stayed off during meals. This was family time. Mothers spent hours preparing pot roasts, mashed potatoes, and vegetables. Grace was often said beforehand. These gatherings strengthened family bonds, taught table manners, and created communication routines. Dinner wasn't merely about nutrition. It was about connection, tradition, and maintaining the family unit's cohesiveness. 7. Weekly allowances and candy store trips. Saturday mornings meant allowance collection and glorious trips to corner candy stores. Children clutched quarters and dimes earned through weekly chores, carefully selecting penny candies, licorice whips, jawbreakers, and bubblegum. Store owners knew every neighborhood kid by name. Glass jars lined wooden shelves filled with colorful sweets. Kids deliberated endlessly, maximizing their purchasing power. A nickel bought 5 pieces of candy. Decisions required serious contemplation. These expeditions taught budgeting, delayed gratification, and social interaction. Candy stores served as community hubs where children experienced independence, made choices, and learned that money, even small amounts, held power and required thoughtful spending. 8. Rotary telephones in homes. Heavy black rotary phones connected 1950s families to the outside world, mounted on kitchen walls or sitting on hall tables. These devices featured circular dials requiring fingers to rotate through each number. Party lines meant neighbors shared connections, requiring telephone etiquette and patience. Long-distance calls cost significantly, reserved for emergencies or special occasions. Teenage girls monopolized phones for hours, twirling cords while gossiping. Busy signals were common frustrations. Phone numbers began with memorable exchanges like Butterfield or Pennsylvania, followed by digits. These phones represented modern communication, though they pale beside today's technology. Families treasured their single household phone line, treating calls with importance and respect. 9. Saturday morning chores before play. Saturday mornings followed strict routines in 50s households. Chores first, fun later. Children couldn't watch cartoons or meet friends until assigned tasks were completed. Boys raked leaves, pulled weeds, or helped fathers with repairs. Girls vacuumed, dusted furniture, or assisted mothers with laundry. Beds required making with hospital corners, rooms needed tidying. Parents inspected work before granting freedom. This discipline taught delayed gratification and responsibility. By mid-morning, liberated children flooded neighborhoods riding bikes, playing ball, or exploring. The earned freedom tasted sweeter because of morning obligations. Saturday's structure balanced work and play, preparing children for adult life's demands while still preserving childhood's joyous freedom. 10. Sleeping arrangements. Siblings sharing rooms. Space limitations in modest 50s homes meant siblings frequently shared bedrooms. Brothers bunked together. Sisters did likewise. Bunk beds maximized limited square footage. Privacy was minimal. Children learned compromise, cooperation, and conflict resolution by necessity. Younger siblings admired older ones. Older ones tolerated younger intrusions. Whispered late-night conversations strengthened bonds. Shared spaces meant shared belongings, occasional arguments over boundaries, and lifelong memories. Only children envied siblings' company. Those sharing rooms sometimes craved solitude. These arrangements fostered closeness and taught children to coexist peacefully. Today's kids might consider shared rooms punishment, but 50s children knew no different, finding comfort in nighttime companionship and sibling solidarity. 11. Classroom discipline and chalkboards. 1950s classrooms operated under strict disciplinary codes that seem almost unthinkable today. Teachers commanded absolute respect and authority, with students rising when adults entered rooms and speaking only when called upon. Misbehavior resulted in corner standing, ruler smacks across knuckles, or trips to the principal's office for paddling. Corporal punishment was widely accepted and expected. The classroom's focal point was the imposing green or black chalkboard stretching across the front wall, where teachers wrote lessons in perfect cursive. Students took turns cleaning erasers outside, clapping them together in clouds of chalk dust. Chalk squeaked against boards as teachers diagrammed sentences, solved mathematics problems, and outlined historical timelines. Wooden-framed slate boards sat on each desk for practice work. Penmanship mattered enormously. Sloppy handwriting invited reprimands. Children sat in orderly rows of bolted-down desks, hands folded when not writing. Teachers ruled their domains completely, and parents supported disciplinary actions without question. This authoritarian structure reflected society's hierarchical values, prioritizing obedience, conformity, and respect for authority. Students learned through repetition, memorization, and fear of consequences. Though critics later questioned these harsh methods, the system produced generations who understood boundaries, consequences, and accountability lessons carried throughout their lives in both positive and problematic ways. 12. Milk breaks and lunchboxes. Mid-morning milk breaks represented cherished rituals in 1950s elementary schools. Small glass bottles of whole milk, delivered fresh daily and stored in refrigerated crates, were distributed to students who sipped through paper straws. These breaks provided nutrition and brief respite from lessons, with chocolate milk available for an extra penny or two. Teachers ensured every child drank their milk, believing it essential for growing bones and strong teeth. Lunchtime brought another beloved tradition, the lunchbox. Metal lunchboxes featuring popular characters, Roy Rogers, Hopalong Cassidy, or Disney figures, became prized possessions and status symbols. Mothers packed sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, homemade cookies, fresh fruit, and thermoses filled with soup or juice. Trading snacks between friends occurred frequently, turning lunch into social commerce. Some children purchased hot lunches in cafeterias, where hair-netted lunch ladies served meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans on segmented trays. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches dominated lunchboxes, occasionally joined by bologna, tuna salad, or leftover meatloaf. These simple meals reflected America's wholesome, uncomplicated food culture before processed snacks dominated. Lunch periods encouraged socialization, though talking too loudly invited reprimands. These daily rituals, milk breaks, and lunch hours provided structure, nutrition, and community, teaching children routine and the comfort of predictable patterns. 13. Duck and cover nuclear drills. The Cold War's terrifying shadow loomed over 1950s classrooms through duck and cover drills that taught children to survive nuclear attacks. Air raid sirens sent students scrambling under desks, covering heads with hands, turning away from windows, and remaining silent until all clear signals sounded. Some schools had designated basement fallout shelters stocked with supplies. The civil defense film featuring Bert the Turtle taught duck and cover to millions of children, making nuclear preparedness seem routine and manageable. These drills normalized existential dread, making apocalyptic scenarios part of everyday childhood. Students practiced monthly, treating atomic bomb preparedness like fire safety. Yellow and black fallout shelter signs marked buildings throughout communities. Families built backyard bomb shelters, stocking canned goods and water. Though experts knew desk diving offered minimal protection from nuclear blasts, authorities promoted these drills to maintain public morale and illusion of control. Children absorbed Cold War anxieties, fearing Soviet attacks while simultaneously learning to live with constant nuclear threat. These drills represented America's collective anxiety, translated into child-appropriate action. Psychologists later studied this generation's normalized trauma. The drills exemplified how geopolitical tensions infiltrated classrooms, replacing complete childhood innocence with awareness of humanity's potential self-destruction, a burden previous generations never carried so consciously. 14. Reading Dick and Jane primers. Generations of 1950s children learned reading fundamentals through Dick and Jane primers published by Scott Forsman. These books featured idealized suburban families, father in suits, mother in dresses and pearls, children Dick and Jane, baby sister Sally, and pets Spot and Puff. Stories employed repetitive simple sentences. See Spot run, run Spot run. The look-say method emphasized word recognition over phonics, encouraging visual memorization. Illustrations depicted spotless homes, manicured lawns, and cheerful, conflict-free existence. Critics later noted these books' overwhelming whiteness and middle-class bias, excluding diverse experiences and family structures. Rural children, minorities, and working-class families saw no reflection of their realities. Despite limitations, millions learned reading through these primers, with phrases becoming cultural touchstones. Teachers used accompanying flashcards and workbooks to reinforce lessons. Students progressed through increasingly complex readers, graduating from We Look to We Come and Go. The series sold millions of copies and dominated American elementary education for decades. Though eventually criticized for cultural narrowness and questionable pedagogical methods, Dick and Jane represented 1950s educational philosophy: standardized, optimistic, conformist, and relentlessly cheerful. These books shaped literacy for an entire generation, while simultaneously reinforcing limited social visions, a complicated legacy, mixing educational success with cultural exclusion. 15. School dress codes and uniforms. 1950s schools enforced strict dress codes, reflecting era's formality and conformity values. Girls wore dresses or skirts, never pants with hemlines covering knees. Catholic schools required uniforms, plaid jumpers, white blouses, and saddle shoes for girls, slacks, white shirts, and ties for boys. Public schools had unwritten but understood rules. Boys wore slacks, button-down shirts, and often ties. Jeans were prohibited as work clothes. Sneakers were gym shoes, only leather shoes were standard. Girls' hair required ribbons or barrettes. Boys kept hair short, neatly combed, and off collars. No makeup was permitted, though high school girls sneaked lipstick applications between classes. Gym uniforms meant matching bloomers or shorts for girls, emphasizing modesty even during exercise. Teachers inspected appearances, sending home students violating standards. These rules reinforced gender norms, social conformity, and respect for institutional authority. Clothing reflected family values and socioeconomic status, with wealthy children wearing newer, nicer versions of required styles. Poor children wore hand-me-downs or carefully mended clothes, trying to meet standards despite financial limitations. Dress codes eliminated some economic distinctions while reinforcing others. Students learned presentation mattered, appearance reflected character, and institutional rules required obedience. Though restrictive by modern standards, these codes taught grooming, appropriateness, and professional preparation skills, valued in 50s workplace culture, where conformity and polish determined success. 16. Typewriters and penmanship classes. 1950s education emphasized practical skills through mandatory typing and penmanship classes. Typing classrooms housed rows of heavy manual typewriters, Royal, Underwood, or Remington models, where students learned touch typing using home row keys. Teachers covered keyboards with cardboard, forcing students to type without looking, building muscle memory through repetitive drills. The room clattered rhythmically as students practiced. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Typing was considered essential preparation for secretarial work, primarily emphasized for girls, though boys also learned. Speed and accuracy mattered enormously. 60 words per minute was the coveted goal. Penmanship received equal attention. Students practiced Palmer method cursive in dedicated classes, forming loops and curves to achieve beautiful, uniform handwriting. Teachers evaluated slant consistency, letter formation, and spacing. Good penmanship reflected character, intelligence, and self-discipline. Students filled workbooks with repeated letter drills, striving for perfection. Fountain pens and inkwells gave way to ballpoint pens during this decade, though some traditional teachers resisted the change. Left-handed students faced particular challenges, forced to adapt to right-handed instruction methods. These practical skills prepared students for business worlds requiring clear communication. Unlike today's keyboard shortcuts and digital fonts, 50 students needed manual dexterity and precision. These classes taught patience, attention to detail, and pride in craftsmanship qualities extending beyond typing and writing into broader life approaches. 17. Boys in shop class, girls in home ec. 1950s education rigidly divided students by gender into vocational training reflecting expected adult roles. Boys took shop class in sawdust-filled workshops where they learned woodworking, metalworking, auto mechanics, and electrical basics. Using lathes, drill presses, and hand tools, boys constructed bookshelf projects, repaired engines, and learned practical skills for future breadwinner roles. Safety goggles, work aprons, and hands-on learning prepared them for trades or home maintenance. Shop teachers, invariably men, emphasized precision, problem-solving, and mechanical competence. Meanwhile, girls attended home economics classes in mock kitchens and sewing rooms. Home ec teachers, always women, taught cooking, baking, sewing, meal planning, nutrition, childcare, and household management. Girls learned to operate sewing machines, follow recipes, set proper tables, and manage household budgets. They baked cakes, hemmed skirts, and practiced hosting skills. These classes prepared girls for wives' and mothers' destiny, emphasizing domestic competence as ultimate achievement. This gender segregation reflected society's beliefs about natural abilities and proper roles. Boys who wanted cooking classes or girls interested in woodworking faced mockery and prohibition. These divisions limited both genders, denying boys domestic skills and girls mechanical knowledge. Though intended to prepare students for adult life, this system reinforced limitations and stereotypes that later generations would challenge. Nonetheless, students gained practical skills. Boys could build furniture, girls could sew wardrobes, creating self-sufficient adults within their prescribed gender boundaries. 18. High school dances and sock hops. 1950s high school social life centered around dances and sock hops held in decorated gymnasiums. Sock hops got their name from students removing shoes to protect gymnasium floors, dancing in socks or stockings to rock and roll, rhythm and blues, and early rock music. Local bands or disc jockeys provided music. Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Buddy Holly, and Elvis Presley filled airwaves despite adult disapproval of suggestive moves. Streamers, balloons, and themes transformed utilitarian gyms into magical spaces. Girls wore full skirts with crinolines, saddle shoes or penny loafers, and carefully curled hair. Boys wore chinos, button-down shirts, and sometimes leather jackets. Couples danced close during slow songs. Energetic jitterbugging and hand-jiving erupted during fast numbers. Chaperones, teachers and parents monitored for inappropriate behavior, ensuring daylight remained visible between dancing couples. These events provided supervised socializing, where teenagers could interact, flirt, and establish social hierarchies. Wallflowers suffered through dances unchosen. Popular kids dominated dance floors. Homecoming and prom represented pinnacle events requiring formal attire, corsages, and elaborate dates. After-parties at local diners, extended festivities. These dances taught social skills, gender roles, and courtship rituals. They created lasting memories, established couples, and provided teenagers structured freedom. Despite adult supervision and rules, sock hops represented youth culture, emerging teenagers claiming spaces, music, and identities separate from parents' generation. 19. School buses and neighborhood walks. 1950s children traveled to school via distinctive yellow buses or neighborhood walks, journeys shaping daily routines and childhood memories. Rural and suburban students rode buses driven by patient, stern drivers who tolerated no nonsense. Children waited at designated stops, lunchboxes in hand, sometimes in harsh weather. Bus rides meant social hierarchies. Cool kids claimed back seats. Younger children sat front. Singing, teasing, and window-gazing filled commutes. Drivers maintained order through assigned seating and ejection threats. Meanwhile, urban and close proximity suburban children walked to neighborhood schools, often without adult supervision. Groups of children traveled together, crossing streets at patrol-staffed intersections, where older students wore white safety belts and held stop signs. Walking provided exercise, independence, and community connection. Children knew neighbors, encountered local shopkeepers, and learned route navigation. Mothers watched from windows, creating informal surveillance networks. Some lucky children walked home for lunch, enjoying midday meals before returning. Bad weather meant trudging through snow or rain complaints, invited lectures about previous generations' harder conditions. These transportation methods fostered independence, responsibility, and physical activity. Children weren't chauffeured door to door. They navigated transportation themselves. Bus rides and walks provided unstructured time for socialization, imagination, and minor mischief. These daily journeys taught self-reliance, time management, and community awareness lessons absorbed through routine rather than instruction, preparing children for autonomous adulthood. 20. PTA and strong parental involvement. The Parent-Teacher Association dominated 1950s school involvement, creating partnerships between educators and families unprecedented in American education. PTA meetings filled school auditoriums monthly, with mothers, sometimes fathers, attending presentations about curriculum, student progress, and school needs. These organizations raised funds through bake sales, carnivals, and raffles, purchasing library books, playground equipment, and classroom supplies. Mothers volunteered as room mothers, organizing parties, coordinating class activities, and supporting teachers. This involvement reflected stay-at-home mothers' availability and communities' education investment. PTAs held considerable influence, shaping policies and priorities. They promoted safety initiatives, supported enrichment programs, and facilitated parent education workshops. Membership was nearly universal among middle-class families. Participation demonstrated good parenting. Schools expected parental support. Teachers contacted homes about problems immediately. Parents respected teachers' authority, supporting disciplinary decisions rather than challenging them. This partnership assumed shared values between institutions and families regarding education's purpose and children's proper upbringing. PTAs also reinforced social structures. Leadership positions went to prominent community members, often excluding working-class and minority families from decision-making. Despite limitations, PTA involvement strengthened school community bonds, improved resources, and demonstrated that education required collaborative effort. This robust engagement created accountability systems where teachers, parents, and administrators worked together toward common goals. The PTA model established expectations for parental involvement that continue influencing American education, though evolving family structures have transformed participation patterns significantly. 21. Black and white television in the living room. The 1950s marked television's transformation from luxury novelty to American household necessity. By mid-decade, over half of homes owned boxy black and white television sets that became living room focal points. Families rearranged furniture around these console models, housed in wooden cabinets resembling fine furniture. The glowing screen measured merely 12 to 17 inches diagonally, yet commanded complete attention. Rabbit ear antennas required constant adjustment for acceptable reception. Children were designated antenna holders during crucial moments. 3 major networks, NBC, CBS, and ABC, broadcast limited programming, signing off around midnight with the national anthem. Television watching became communal family activity, with everyone gathering for evening programs. Father controlled the single dial, switching between few available channels. Shows were live or filmed, without videotape's convenience. Commercial breaks sent children to kitchens for snacks. Picture quality varied wildly. Snow, static, and horizontal rolling plagued broadcasts. Repair technicians made house calls when vacuum tubes failed. Despite technical limitations, television revolutionized American entertainment and information consumption. Families structured evenings around broadcast schedules. The TV set represented modernity, prosperity, and connection to wider world. These primitive devices, laughable by today's standards, captivated audiences and fundamentally altered American culture, family dynamics, and leisure time. Television became the hearth around which modern families gathered, replacing radio as the dominant home entertainment medium. 22. Popular TV shows. I Love Lucy. I Love Lucy dominated 1950s television, becoming the era's most beloved and influential sitcom. Premiering in October 1951, the show starred real-life couple Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz as Lucy and Ricky Ricardo. Monday nights at 9 o'clock found America glued to sets, watching Lucy's hilarious schemes, whether infiltrating Ricky's nightclub act, stomping grapes in Italian vineyards, or working chocolate factory assembly lines. The show revolutionized television by filming before live studio audiences using multiple cameras, creating superior quality for reruns. Lucy's physical comedy genius transcended the medium's limitations, with her expressive face and impeccable timing generating endless laughter. Supporting characters Fred and Ethel Mertz, played by William Frawley and Vivian Vance, provided perfect foils. The show tackled Lucy's pregnancy, Ball's real condition groundbreaking for television, though censors prohibited saying "pregnant" on air. 44 million viewers watched Little Ricky's birth episode, more than attended President Eisenhower's inauguration the next day. The show's popularity was unprecedented. Department stores closed Monday evenings because nobody shopped during broadcasts. I Love Lucy, established situation comedy formulas still used today, proved women could carry shows, and demonstrated television's power to unite the nation through shared entertainment. Reruns continue playing 70 years later, testament to timeless humor. The show defined 50s television, becoming a cultural phenomenon that reflected and shaped American domestic ideals while providing pure escapist entertainment. 23. Drive-in movie theaters. Drive-in theaters epitomized 1950s leisure, combining America's automobile obsession with entertainment passion. These outdoor venues featured massive screens, visible from parking spaces where families and couples watched movies from car comfort. By mid-decade, over 4,000 drive-ins operated nationwide. Admission cost per carload typically $1, making drive-ins economical for large families. Speakers hooked onto partially rolled windows, delivering tinny sound directly into vehicles. Concession stands sold popcorn, candy, sodas, and hot dogs during intermissions, providing significant profits. Playgrounds beneath screens entertained children before shows. Pajama-clad kids played on swings until darkness fell. Double features meant hours of entertainment, with cartoons and newsreels padding programs. Teenagers appreciated drive-ins' privacy. These passion pits offered unchaperoned dating opportunities. With steamed windows and distracted viewing, families brought blankets, pillows, and homemade snacks, transforming cars into mobile living rooms. Bad weather meant cancelled shows and disappointed patrons. Drive-ins democratized moviegoing, accommodating families with babies or rowdy children without disturbing others. The experience combined novelty, affordability, and convenience. Stars twinkled overhead as dramatic scenes unfolded on towering screens. Drive-ins represented post-war prosperity, car ownership, leisure time, and suburban expansion converging. Though declining in later decades, 1950s drive-ins created cherished memories, becoming nostalgic symbols of simpler times when entertainment meant piling into station wagons for magical evenings under stars. 24. Radio dramas before TV took over. Before television's dominance, 1950s early years featured radio dramas captivating American imaginations through audio storytelling. Families gathered around radio consoles for evening programs like The Shadow, Gunsmoke, The Lone Ranger, and Dragnet. Sound effects artists created atmosphere: galloping horses, creaking doors, gunshots, and footsteps, while announcers proclaimed, "Only the Shadow knows." Theatre of the mind engaged listeners more actively than passive television viewing. Radio required imagination. Listeners visualized characters, settings, and action from audio cues alone. Soap operas like Ma Perkins kept housewives company during daytime hours, while adventure serials excited children after school. Comedy shows like Fibber McGee and Molly provided laughter through witty dialogue and running gags. As television spread, radio programming shifted toward music and news, abandoning expensive dramatic productions. Many popular radio shows transitioned to television. Gunsmoke successfully made the leap, but something was lost in translation. Radio's intimate, imaginative quality couldn't compete with television's visual immediacy. By decade's end, radio dramas mostly disappeared, surviving only in nostalgia and recordings. This transition marked significant cultural shift from audio to visual entertainment consumption. Radio's golden age ended as families abandoned living room radio gatherings for television viewing. Yet those who experienced radio drama's heyday remembered the unique magic of stories conjured purely through sound, voices, music, and imagination. An art form television's arrival effectively killed. 25. Comic books, craze and censorship fears. 1950s children devoured comic books voraciously, despite growing adult alarm about their influence. Comics cost 10 cents, making them affordable entertainment purchased at corner stores, newsstands, and drugstore racks. Superheroes, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, battled villains, while crime, horror, and romance comics attracted older readers. EC Comics published lurid horror titles featuring gruesome artwork and twisted tales that thrilled teenagers but horrified parents. Psychiatrist Frederick Wortham's 1954 book Seduction of the Innocent blamed comics for juvenile delinquency, claiming they corrupted youth, promoted violence, and contained inappropriate sexual content. Senate subcommittee hearings investigated comics' impact on children. Public comic book burnings occurred in some communities. Responding to moral panic and threatened government regulation, publishers created the Comics Code Authority, self-censorship organization that sanitized content. Approved comics displayed code seals. Retailers refused carrying unapproved titles. EC Comics, unwilling to comply, ceased most publications. Mad Magazine survived by converting to magazine format. The code banned excessive violence, sympathetic criminal portrayals, disrespect toward authority, and anything suggesting sex or horror. This neutered comics significantly, eliminating artistic innovation and mature storytelling. Despite censorship, children continued reading approved adventures, trading comics with friends, and building collections. Comics provided affordable escapism, reading practice, and cultural literacy. The controversy illustrated 50s tensions between emerging youth culture and adult authority, with older generations fearing media's influence on impressionable minds, concerns echoing today's video game and social media debates. 26. Saturday matinees at the movies. Saturday afternoons transported 1950s children into darkened theaters for matinee magic. Parents dropped kids off with quarters admission, popcorn and candy money for hours of unsupervised entertainment. Movie palaces and neighborhood theaters showed programs designed for young audiences. Double features, serials with cliffhanger endings, cartoons, and newsreels. Westerns dominated Gene Autry, Roy Rogers, and the Lone Ranger battled outlaws. Science fiction serials like Flash Gordon and Captain Video provided space adventure. Monster movies, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Them, terrified and delighted simultaneously. The Bowery Boys and Abbott and Costello provided comedy relief. Theaters filled with noisy children, shouting at screens, cheering heroes, and booing villains. Sticky floors, worn seats, and projectionist errors barely diminished enjoyment. Ushers patrolled aisles with flashlights, maintaining minimal order. Concession stands sold popcorn in paper bags, candy boxes, and fountain sodas. Between features, children ran to bathrooms or lobbies, comparing reactions and predictions. Serial cliffhangers ensured next Saturday's return would Flash Gordon escape the collapsing building. Matinees provided affordable childcare and children's independence, letting them navigate public spaces without parents. These experiences created shared cultural knowledge, generational bonding through common entertainment. Saturday matinees represented childhood freedom, imagination, and community. They established movie-going habits lasting lifetimes, while creating cherished memories of simpler entertainment, no special effects needed, just captivating stories and willingness to believe in flickering images dancing across silver screens. 27. Yo-yos, hula hoops, and fads. 1950s children experienced successive crazes, sweeping through schools and neighborhoods with remarkable speed and intensity. Yo-yos enjoyed periodic revivals throughout the decade, with Duncan demonstrators visiting schools to showcase Walk the Dog, Around the World, and Rock the Baby tricks. Children practiced obsessively, competing for mastery. The hula hoop exploded in 1958 when Wham-O introduced colorful plastic versions. Within months, 25 million sold as America gyrated furiously. Children, teenagers, and adults rotated hips, attempting to keep hoops spinning around waists. Competitions determined who could hula longest. Doctors warned about injuries. Some countries banned hoops as dangerous or indecent. The fad burned brilliantly but briefly by 1959. Unsold hoops piled in warehouses. Other crazes included coonskin caps, inspired by Davy Crockett television shows, with every child demanding authentic or imitation raccoon tails. Poodle skirts became teenage girl uniforms. 3D movies briefly captivated audiences wearing cardboard glasses. Silly putty, invented accidentally, became beloved toy. These fads demonstrated mass media's growing power to create synchronized national phenomena. Television advertising drove many crazes, creating demand instantly across the country. Children desperately needed whatever everyone else owned, fearing social exclusion. Parents indulged relatively inexpensive toys that provided active play. These fads created shared experiences, generational markers, and nostalgic memories. They exemplified post-war consumer culture, disposable income, and childhood's commercialization trends intensifying in subsequent decades as marketing targeted ever younger consumers. 28. Rock and roll arriving with Elvis. Rock and roll erupted into 1950s consciousness, revolutionizing music and youth culture with Elvis Presley as its charismatic, controversial figurehead. Elvis's 1956 breakthrough on national television, his appearances on the Dorsey Brothers, Milton Berle, Steve Allen, and Ed Sullivan show scandalized adults while electrifying teenagers. His gyrating hips, sneering lips, and fusion of rhythm and blues, country, and gospel created something dangerous, sexual, and thrilling. Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, and Don't Be Cruel dominated charts while parents condemned the music as vulgar, corrupting, and racially inappropriate. Rock and roll originated from black musical traditions, making its popularity among white youth culturally threatening. Churches denounced rock and roll as devil's music. Schools banned the music and associated dances. Ed Sullivan famously filmed Elvis only from the waist up, censoring his provocative movements. Despite or because of adult opposition, teenagers embraced rock and roll passionately. Other performers like Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Buddy Holly, and Jerry Lee Lewis contributed to the revolution. Rock and roll provided youth with distinct cultural identity, separate from parents' big band and crooner preferences. The music's energy, rebellion, and sexuality expressed teenage feelings that traditional entertainment ignored. This generational divide presaged 60s countercultural conflicts. Rock and roll fundamentally altered popular music, created teenager as demographic category, and established youth culture's power to challenge established norms, all centering on Elvis's swiveling hips and revolutionary sound that parents feared and teenagers adored. 29. Teen idols and fan clubs. 1950s teenagers worshipped idols with unprecedented intensity, creating fan culture that defined adolescent identity and commercial marketing. Elvis Presley dominated, but James Dean, Marlon Brando, Pat Boone, Ricky Nelson, and Frankie Avalon attracted devoted followings. Girls screamed at concerts, covered bedroom walls with magazine photos, and joined fan clubs receiving newsletters, photos, and membership cards. These clubs connected isolated fans, creating communities sharing obsessions. Teen magazines like 16, Tiger Beat, and Teen World fed fan hunger with interviews, photos, and personal details. Readers learned favorite foods, colors, hobbies, and romantic preferences, creating intimacy illusions with distant celebrities. Record sales reflected fan devotion. Teenagers saved allowances for 45 RPM singles played repeatedly on portable record players. Concert audiences shrieked so loudly performers couldn't be heard. Girls fainted, cried, and mobbed idols attempting to touch them or tear clothing souvenirs. This behavior baffled parents who saw mass hysteria and wasted emotion. Psychologists analyzed teenage girls screaming as sexual sublimation and group conformity. Fan devotion provided identity, community, and safe romantic fantasy. Idols represented rebellion, sexuality, and independence within socially acceptable boundaries. Admiring Elvis was safer than actual teenage sexual activity. Marketing recognized teenagers' purchasing power, creating dedicated products, magazines, and merchandise. This commercialization of adolescence established patterns dominating youth culture subsequently. Teen idol worship represented emerging youth culture, claiming space, developing distinct tastes, and asserting independence from parental preferences through passionate, sometimes hysterical, devotion to charismatic young performers representing idealized adolescence. 30. Bowling alleys as social hubs. Bowling alleys served as 1950s social centers, where families, leagues, and teenagers gathered for recreation, competition, and community. Post-war prosperity fueled bowling's explosive growth. Americans built thousands of modern lanes featuring automatic pin setters, reducing labor and increasing efficiency. Bowling alleys evolved from working-class haunts into respectable family entertainment venues with snack bars, nurseries, and comfortable seating. Adults joined workplace leagues competing weekly, with teams sponsored by local businesses. League bowling nights filled alleys with competitive camaraderie, cigarette smoke, and sound of crashing pins. Men and women bowled separately and together in mixed leagues. Bowling shirts featuring team names and sponsor logos became fashion statements. Children attended birthday parties featuring games, pizza, and bumper-equipped lanes, preventing gutter balls. Teenagers made bowling alleys, hangout destinations, relatively cheap dates, offering activity, food, and social atmosphere. Scoring required mathematical skills before automatic systems. Keeping score was serious responsibility. Rental shoes in various conditions were mandatory. Nobody questioned sanitation. Pro shops sold customized balls, shoes, and bags for serious bowlers. Tournaments attracted crowds watching skilled bowlers throw perfect games. Bowling combined exercise, skill, competition, and socialization, appealing across age groups and economic classes. It represented democratic recreation. Anyone could bowl regardless of athletic ability. Alleys hosted leagues, casual play, and special events, becoming community gathering places. Television began broadcasting bowling tournaments, legitimizing it as spectator sport. 1950s bowling culture created lasting recreational traditions, with many boomers maintaining lifelong bowling habits established during childhood alley visits. 31. Soda fountains and milkshakes. 1950s soda fountains represented quintessential American gathering places where teenagers sipped milkshakes, families enjoyed ice cream sodas, and communities socialized over sweet treats. These gleaming chrome and marble counters dominated drugstores, diners, and dedicated ice cream parlors. White uniformed soda jerks operated behind counters, expertly mixing carbonated water with flavored syrups, scooping ice cream, and creating elaborate confections. The vocabulary was distinctly American. Phosphates, egg creams, ice cream sodas, banana splits, and towering sundaes topped with whipped cream, nuts, and maraschino cherries. Milkshakes, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, or specialty flavors were made thick and creamy using Hamilton Beach mixers, served in tall glasses with extra helpings in metal mixing containers. Customers perched on red vinyl swivel stools, watching soda jerks perform their craft. Teenagers claimed soda fountains as territory after school, nursing cokes for hours while gossiping, flirting, and feeding jukeboxes. Parents welcomed these supervised hangouts as safer than unsupervised alternatives. Root beer floats, lime rickeys, and cherry phosphates provided caffeine-free options. Soda fountains represented innocent adolescence romance budding over shared maltids. Arguments settled over banana splits. They embodied small-town America's idealized community spaces, where generations mixed comfortably. Though fast food chains would eventually displace most soda fountains, their 1950s heyday created enduring nostalgia for simpler times, when happiness meant spinning on counter stools while savoring handcrafted milkshakes in neighborhood gathering places. 32. A&W Root Beer Stands. A&W Root Beer stands epitomized 1950s car culture and casual dining innovation. These roadside establishments, multiplying rapidly throughout the decade, featured distinctive orange and brown color schemes and carside service, where uniformed car hops delivered orders directly to parked automobiles. Founded decades earlier, A&W exploded during the 50s, as franchising made expansion possible. Drivers pulled into designated parking spots, flashed headlights, and awaited car hops who took orders and returned, balancing metal trays hooking onto partially rolled windows. The signature product, creamy root beer, served in frosted glass mugs, refreshed customers on hot summer days. Available sizes ranged from small to the massive gallon jug. The root beer's unique flavor, creamy, smooth, slightly spicy, created devoted fans. Root beer floats combined vanilla ice cream with root beer, creating frothy, delicious dessert drinks. A&W also served hamburgers, hot dogs, French fries, and onion rings, classic American fast food before McDonald's dominance. Families made A&W destinations for weekend treats. Teenagers cruised between multiple stands, socializing. The experience combined automobile convenience with restaurant quality, eliminating need to leave cars. Car hops, often young women in matching uniforms, became iconic figures, sometimes wearing roller skates for efficient service. A&W represented post-war optimism, prosperity, and automobile-centered lifestyle. Though operations evolved over subsequent decades, 1950s A&W stands created lasting memories of frosty mugs, carside dining, and carefree summer evenings when root beer stands were community gathering points for mobile, prosperous Americans embracing car culture enthusiastically. 33. Ice cream trucks in neighborhoods. Ice cream trucks became beloved 1950s neighborhood fixtures, their tinkling bells and cheerful melodies announcing arrival and sending children scrambling for change. These mobile vendors navigated residential streets during warm months, typically late afternoons when children finished homework and mothers prepared dinner. Drivers, often friendly local entrepreneurs, knew neighborhoods intimately, learning children's names and preferences. Trucks featured painted panels displaying available treats, popsicles, fudgicles, creamsicles, drumsticks, ice cream sandwiches, and novelty bars shaped like cartoon characters. Everything cost nickels, dimes, or quarters, affordable with allowance money. The experience involved ritual, hearing distant bells, begging parents for money, racing barefoot across lawns, and studying the colorful menu boards while standing in line with neighborhood friends. Popular choices included push-ups, cylindrical containers, where you pushed ice cream upward, and twin popsicles designed for sharing but usually fought over. Drivers reached into freezer compartments, pulling out selections wrapped in colorful paper featuring jokes or riddles. Hot summer days meant racing against melting ice cream, dripping down arms and staining clothes. Ice cream trucks represented childhood independence and neighborhood community. They provided small freedoms, making purchasing decisions, interacting with adults, managing money within safe, familiar environments. Parents trusted ice cream vendors, seeing them as community members rather than strangers. These mobile businesses created daily summer rituals, neighborhood gathering moments, and cherished memories. Ice cream truck bells became Pavlovian triggers, producing instant excitement and nostalgia sounds evoking simpler childhoods when happiness arrived in frozen treats purchased from friendly neighborhood vendors. 34. Penny candy and comic book racks. Corner stores and drugstores featured penny candy displays and comic book racks that drew 1950s children like magnets, creating retail experiences centered on youthful desires and limited budgets. Penny candy-filled glass jars lining wooden counters or occupied compartmented display cases where children studied options seriously before committing to purchases. Selections included Mary Janes, Tootsie Rolls, Bit-O Honey, Jawbreakers, licorice whips, candy buttons on paper strips, wax lips, pixie sticks, and countless other confections. Though called penny candy, pieces sometimes cost 2 or 3 cents, but nickels and dimes still bought satisfying quantities. Store owners patiently waited, while children deliberated endlessly, weighing preferences and maximizing value. The purchasing process taught decision-making, delayed gratification, and basic mathematics. Nearby, comic book racks rotated with new issues weekly. Comics cost 10 cents, affordable luxury, purchased with allowance money. Children flipped through options carefully, debating between superhero adventures, Archie's teenage hijinks, or Disney characters' exploits. Some stores allowed reading before buying, others prohibited this practice strictly. Comic collecting became a serious hobby for some children who protected issues in boxes, trading duplicates and seeking rare editions. The social aspect mattered enormously. Children discussed candy preferences and comic storylines, building friendships through shared experiences. These stores served as community hubs, where children exercised consumer power, developed tastes, and experienced independence. Shopkeepers became familiar figures, sometimes extending credit or offering advice. These retail spaces represented childhood's economic education, learning that resources were limited, choices had consequences, and satisfaction came from wise decisions about candy and comics. 35. Spam and canned goods in meals. 1950s homemakers embraced canned goods enthusiastically, viewing them as modern conveniences, reducing kitchen labor while providing consistent quality. Spam Hormel's canned spiced ham product became pantry staple, despite jokes about its mysterious contents. Sliced and fried, Spam appeared in breakfast alongside eggs, in sandwiches for lunch, or as dinner protein alongside vegetables. Wartime familiarity had normalized Spam consumption, and prosperity didn't eliminate its appeal. Canned vegetables, green beans, corn, peas, carrots lined pantry shelves, opening quickly for weeknight dinners. Campbell's condensed soups became cooking foundations, with cream of mushroom soup particularly versatile for casseroles, gravies, and sauces. Tuna fish, canned salmon, and Vienna sausages provided protein options. Canned fruits, peaches, pears, fruit cocktail offered desserts and salads. Home canning remained popular, but commercial canning's consistency and convenience proved increasingly appealing. Cookbook recipes routinely called for canned ingredients, reflecting their acceptance as legitimate cooking components rather than inferior substitutes. The era's aesthetics embraced processed foods as scientific progress, modern living through chemistry. Critics later questioned nutritional value and excessive sodium, but 50s cooks valued time savings and reliability. Bomb shelter culture reinforced stockpiling non-perishable goods, making canned foods patriotic preparedness. Casseroles combining multiple canned ingredients, tuna noodle, green bean with fried onions became comfort food classics. These preserved goods represented modernity, efficiency, and American technological prowess. Though fresh food advocates would eventually challenge processed food dominance, 1950s homemakers considered canned goods essential kitchen allies, symbols of progress, liberating them from labor-intensive food preservation and preparation. 36. Sunday family dinners with roasts. Sunday dinners represented 1950s families' most formal weekly meals, featuring roasted meats, multiple side dishes, and mandatory family attendance. These elaborate midday or early evening feasts followed church services, providing opportunities for extended family gatherings, enforcing table manners, and reinforcing family hierarchies. The centerpiece, typically roast beef, pork, chicken, or ham, required hours of preparation. Mothers rose early, seasoning meat, preparing accompanying dishes, setting tables with good china and silverware. Roasts emerged from ovens perfectly browned, carved ceremonially by fathers wielding carving knives and forks. Accompanying sides included mashed potatoes with gravy, vegetables, dinner rolls, and salads. Desserts, homemade pies, cakes, or cobblers completed meals. Everyone dressed nicely. Casual clothes weren't acceptable. Fathers sat at table heads, leading grace and controlling conversation. Children practiced manners, keeping elbows off tables, asking politely for items, and remaining seated until excused. Conversation covered family business, upcoming events, and community news. Sunday dinners required significant labor from mothers who cooked, served, and cleaned afterward, often with daughters' assistance. These meals demonstrated family solidarity, religious observance, and domestic competence. They represented weekly splurges, more expensive cuts of meat justified by Sunday's special status. Leftovers provided Monday meals, extending Sunday's investment. These dinners reinforced gender roles, women's domestic expertise, men's authority, children's obedience, while creating weekly rituals binding families together. Though labor-intensive and formal, Sunday dinners represented family values, traditions, and weekly rhythms structuring 1950s domestic life, providing stability and continuity in changing times. 37. Coca-Cola in glass bottles. Coca-Cola dominated 1950s beverage consumption, with distinctive 6.5-ounce glass bottles becoming cultural icons representing American refreshment and marketing genius. The contoured bottle's unique shape, designed so customers could identify Coke, even in darkness, or when broken, made it instantly recognizable worldwide. Bottles emerged ice-cold from red vending machines requiring nickels, or from corner store coolers where they nestled in icy water. The ritual involved popping bottle caps with mounted openers, hearing the satisfying hiss of carbonation release, and tilting back bottles for that first cold, sweet gulp. Glass bottles kept Coke colder, longer than later containers. Advertisements saturated American consciousness magazine spreads, billboard displays, radio jingles, and television commercials featuring attractive families enjoying Coke during wholesome activities. The "Pause that refreshes" slogan captured Coke's positioning as deserved break from daily activities. Bottles were returnable deposit systems ensured their return for sanitizing and refilling, making them environmentally sustainable before that concept existed. Children collected empty bottles for deposit money, turning trash into treasure. Coca-Cola represented more than beverage. It symbolized American optimism, capitalism's success, and democratic consumption. Everyone from millionaires to working-class families drank identical Cokes from identical bottles. The formula remained famously secret. International expansion made Coke ambassador of American culture worldwide. At soda fountains, Coca-Cola syrup mixed with carbonated water created fountain Cokes. Some claimed tasted superior to bottled versions. These glass bottles represented 1950s consumer culture, mass-produced yet personal, disposable yet valuable, simple yet iconic, perfect metaphor for post-war American prosperity and confidence. 38. Jell-O molds at parties. Jell-O molds achieved extraordinary 1950s popularity, becoming obligatory party offerings and symbols of homemaking prowess. These jiggly, colorful gelatin creations appeared at potlucks, holiday gatherings, bridge parties, and family celebrations. Jell-O's versatility inspired creative experimentation. Sweet desserts, featuring fruit cocktails suspended in lime or cherry gelatin, savory concoctions, combining lemon Jell-O with vegetables, mayonnaise, and sometimes seafood. Ring molds dominated, their hollow centers filled with cottage cheese, fruit salad, or whipped cream. Layered molds showcased multiple colors and flavors, requiring patience as each layer set before adding the next. Some incorporated cream cheese or whipped cream, creating opaque layers contrasting with transparent gelatin. Recipes appeared in women's magazines, cookbooks, and Jell-O company promotions. Competition emerged among homemakers to create most impressive molds, elaborate designs featuring embedded fruits, vegetables, nuts, or marshmallows, arranged artistically. Copper and aluminum molds in various shapes, fish, wreaths, architectural designs enabled creative presentations. Unmolding required technique, warming mold exteriors slightly, running knives around edges, inverting onto plates, hoping molds released intact. Successful unmolding prompted pride. Collapsed molds caused embarrassment. These dishes represented modern convenience, packaged foods, creating impressive results with minimal effort. Jell-O transcended class boundaries. Wealthy and working-class tables featured similar molds. The trend's intensity seems inexplicable now, but 50s culture valued conformity, convenience, and creative domestic expression within prescribed boundaries. Jell-O molds satisfied all three, becoming ubiquitous at social gatherings. Though later generations mocked these creations, 1950s hostesses served them proudly, confident their shimmering molds demonstrated sophisticated entertaining skills. 39. Kraft macaroni and cheese novelty. Kraft macaroni and cheese dinner, introduced during the 1930s, but achieving mass popularity during the 1950s, revolutionized American home cooking by providing quick, cheap, reliable meals children enthusiastically consumed. The distinctive blue box contained elbow macaroni and a packet of powdered cheese sauce requiring only boiling water, butter, and milk to create creamy orange comfort food in minutes. Costing 25 cents initially, it offered remarkable value for budget-conscious families, particularly those with multiple children. The product's consistency eliminated cooking uncertainty. Every box produced identical results, unlike finicky recipes requiring skill and judgment. This reliability appealed to inexperienced cooks and working mothers seeking dependable dinner solutions. Children loved the bright orange color, mild cheese flavor, and soft pasta texture. Many kids would eat macaroni and cheese when refusing other foods, making it parental backup plan for picky eaters. The product represented post-war food science applying industrial efficiency to home cooking. Powdered cheese technological marvel allowing shelf-stable dairy products exemplified modern convenience. Families served it as side dishes with meat and vegetables, or as complete meals supplemented with hot dogs. Some mothers felt guilty serving box dinners, considering them inferior to homemade versions, but convenience often won. Kraft heavily advertised the product, emphasizing ease, economy, and child appeal. The dinner became childhood staple, comfort food, triggering nostalgia decades later. It represented democratized eating. Rich and poor families alike served Kraft macaroni and cheese, united by bright blue boxes and that distinctive orange glow, making it authentically American food transcending class boundaries. 40. Hot dogs at baseball games. Hot dogs and baseball formed inseparable 1950s pairing, with ballpark franks becoming synonymous with America's pastime and summer leisure. Major and minor league games provided family entertainment, and hot dogs represented essential game day experience. Vendors traversed stadium aisles carrying metal boxes strapped to bodies, shouting, "Hot dogs here, get your red hots." Fans raised hands, catching wrapped dogs tossed impressively accurate distances. The ritual involved unwrapping steamed buns, cradling plump frankfurters, adding yellow mustard squeezed from bottles, maybe chopped onions or sauerkraut, and taking that first satisfying bite while watching plays unfold. The taste, salty, savory, slightly greasy, became flavor memory tied permanently to baseball. Hot dogs cost reasonable amounts, making them accessible treats families afforded without financial stress. Children pleaded for hot dogs, Cracker Jack, and soda pop, creating complete ballpark experience. The combination of sun, crowds, excitement, and hot dogs created multisensory memories lasting lifetimes. Stadiums featured concession stands under seating areas where longer lines moved slowly but offered respite from Sunday. Some fans brought thermoses and sandwiches, but hot dogs represented authenticity. True fans ate ballpark franks. The frankfurter's working-class origins made it democratic food suitable for bleachers and box seats alike. Stars and regular folks consumed identical hot dogs, emphasizing baseball's egalitarian spirit. This tradition, beginning long before the 50s, crystallized during this decade as baseball attendance peaked and hot dogs became cultural symbols representing American informality, accessibility, and simple pleasures found in summer afternoons watching national pastime while eating quintessentially American food. 41. Poodle skirts and saddle shoes. Poodle skirts epitomized 1950s teenage girl fashion, becoming iconic symbols of the era's youthful femininity and rock and roll culture. These felt circle skirts, typically in bright colors like pink, turquoise, or black, featured applique designs most famously poodles, but also records, telephones, or other whimsical motifs. The skirt's full swinging shape made them perfect for dancing, twirling dramatically during sock hops and revealing layers of stiff petticoats underneath. Girls wore them with tight sweaters or blouses, cinching waists with wide elastic belts. The look was simultaneously innocent and flirtatious, embodying contradictory 50s values about female sexuality. Saddle shoes, two-tone leather, Oxford shoes with distinctive saddle-shaped decorative panels completed the ensemble. These comfortable flat shoes, originally designed for sports, became everyday footwear. Black and white combinations dominated, though brown and white versions existed. Girls meticulously cleaned white portions with special polish, maintaining pristine appearance. Both poodle skirts and saddle shoes crossed economic boundaries. Wealthy girls bought expensive versions, while middle-class girls made their own or purchased affordable alternatives. The combination represented youthful rebellion within acceptable parameters. Girls could express individuality through skirt designs while maintaining modesty and propriety. These fashions appeared in movies, television shows, and magazines, spreading nationwide uniformity. Decades later, poodle skirts remain Halloween costume staples and nostalgic symbols. They captured 50s contradictions, conformity and individuality, innocence and sexuality, tradition and modernity, all swirling together in brightly colored felt circles, twirling across gymnasium floors to rock and roll rhythms that scandalized parents while thrilling teenagers discovering their own cultural identity, separate from adult authority. 42. Greasers. Leather jackets and slicked hair. Greasers represented 1950s working-class youth rebellion, creating distinctive subcultural style that challenged middle-class conformity and foreshadowed later countercultures. These primarily male teenagers and young adults wore black leather motorcycle jackets, often perfecto style with asymmetric zippers over white t-shirts, channeling Marlon Brando's iconic The Wild One appearance. Dark denim jeans, rolled-at cuffs, and motorcycle or engineer boots completed the look. The defining feature was hair grown longer than respectable standards permitted, heavily pomaded with products like Brill Cream or Vitalis, then combed into elaborate styles, ducktails, DA, pompadours, or slicked-back looks. Maintaining these hairstyles required constant attention. Greasers carried combs in back pockets, frequently checking and adjusting their appearance. The aesthetic projected dangerous masculinity, tough, sexual, potentially violent, that simultaneously attracted and repelled mainstream society. Greasers embraced rock and roll enthusiastically, particularly artists like Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, and Little Richard. They customized cars, street raced, and generally rejected middle-class aspirations their families couldn't afford anyway. Society viewed them as juvenile delinquents. They saw themselves as authentic individuals refusing phony conformity. The style had ethnic and class dimensions. Many greasers were Italian, Latino, or working-class white youth excluded from suburban prosperity narratives. Adults feared greasers, schools prohibited their fashion, and police harassed them regularly. Movies like Rebel Without a Cause romanticized their alienation. Greasers created alternative masculinity, rejecting both their father's working-class defeat and middle-class corporate conformity, establishing youth subculture template that influenced decades of subsequent rebellions through fashion, music, and attitude. 43. Crew cuts and flat-top haircuts. Crew cuts and flat tops dominated 1950s male grooming, representing masculine conformity, military influence, and practical simplicity. These short haircuts kept hair off collars and foreheads, meeting school and workplace standards while requiring minimal maintenance. Crew cuts featured hair cut uniformly short, typically 1 to 2 inches across the entire head, slightly longer on top than sides. Flat tops took this further, cutting top hair to stand upright in flat level plane, creating distinctive squared-off appearance achieved through precise barbering and usually maintained with wax or pomade. These styles emerged from military influence. World War II and Korean War servicemen brought military grooming standards into civilian life. Fathers who served expected sons to maintain similar standards. Barbershops dominated male grooming. Home haircuts were considered inadequate except for young boys. Barbershop visits occurred regularly, often Saturday mornings, becoming father-son rituals. Boys sat in chairs with booster seats, draped in striped cloths, while barbers snipped away with scissors and clippers. The smell of hair tonic, sight of spinning barber poles, and sound of conversation created masculine environments where men and boys gathered. These haircuts signaled respectability, discipline, and conformity qualities 50s culture valued highly. Longer hair indicated rebellious tendencies or artistic pretensions. Short hair meant reliability. Athletes, students, businessmen, and fathers wore virtually identical styles, erasing individual distinction in favor of group conformity. These haircuts represented broader cultural values: discipline over expression, uniformity over individuality, practicality over aesthetics. They visually marked males as properly socialized members of orderly society, their shorn heads testifying to internalized discipline and acceptance of prevailing standards. 44. Dresses and aprons for moms. 1950s mothers dressed formally by modern standards, wearing dresses or skirts with blouses throughout the day, embodying feminine domesticity ideals promoted through media and culture. Casual clothes like pants remained largely unacceptable for women in public or even at home. House dresses, simple washable cotton dresses designed for home wear, were standard daytime attire. These featured practical designs, short sleeves, shirtwaist styles, modest lengths, cheerful prints, or solid colors. Despite spending days cooking, cleaning, and managing households, mothers maintained presentable appearances, often applying makeup and styling hair before families awoke. Pearl necklaces became symbolic accessories. Television's Leave It to Beaver mom, June Cleaver, famously vacuumed wearing pearls, setting impossible standards. Aprons protected dresses from kitchen work, full aprons covering entire dress fronts, or decorative half aprons tied around waists. These came in various styles: ruffled, embroidered, or plain, homemade, or store-bought. Aprons represented domestic role while adding personality to utilitarian garments. For errands, mothers wore better dresses, coordinating handbags, gloves, and hats, never appearing in public without proper attire. This formality required extensive wardrobes and constant laundering. The expectation that mothers maintain attractiveness for working husbands returning home added pressure. Women freshened makeup, changed into nicer dresses, and prepared themselves along with dinner. Critics later identified this performance as exhausting charade, requiring women to look effortlessly perfect while performing demanding labor. However, many 50s mothers took pride in appearance, viewing proper dress as self-respect and family representation. These clothing expectations reinforced gender roles, limiting women's physical freedom, while emphasizing domestic identity as primary, if not sole, definition of femininity and worth. 45. Denim jeans and rolled-up cuffs. Denim jeans underwent significant 1950s transformation, from working-class uniform to youth culture symbol, particularly when worn with rebelliously rolled cuffs. Originally workwear for laborers, farmers, and cowboys, jeans gained teenage adoption despite adult disapproval. James Dean's jeans in Rebel Without a Cause and Marlon Brando's in The Wild One elevated denim to rebellious fashion statement. Teenagers wore jeans tight-fitting, contradicting parents' preferences for looser fits. Rolling up cuffs 3 to 4 inches became signature styling, showing off shoes, saddle shoes for girls, boots or sneakers for boys, while suggesting casual defiance of convention. Many schools banned jeans, considering them inappropriate for educational settings. Churches refused entry to jean-wearing teenagers. This adult opposition paradoxically increased jeans' appeal. They represented youth independence and rejection of stuffy conformity. Girls wearing jeans challenged gender norms since pants remained controversial female attire. Levi's and Lee dominated the market, with Wrangler gaining popularity. Jeans were affordable, durable, and increasingly available in various washes and styles. The fabric softened with wear, creating personalized fit and appearance. Teenagers traded tips for breaking in stiff new jeans, washing in hot water, wearing in bathtubs. Denim became canvas for self-expression through patches, embroidery, or strategic distressing. This working-class fabric's adoption by middle-class youth represented class mixing and authenticity seeking that characterized emerging youth culture. By decade's end, jeans were establishing themselves as permanent American fashion staples, eventually transcending class, age, and formality boundaries to become globally ubiquitous garments, representing American casual culture. 46. Letterman jackets in high school. Letterman jackets represented 1950s high school aristocracy, visually marking athletic achievement and social status through distinctive wool and leather varsity jackets. These prized garments featured school colors in wool body with contrasting leather sleeves, school letters or mascots prominently displayed on chests, and often chenille patches indicating specific sports, years, or accomplishments. Earning a letter required significant athletic contribution, typically full season of varsity play in football, basketball, baseball, or track. The jacket itself cost substantial money, making ownership additionally meaningful. Athletes wore them constantly, establishing immediate visual hierarchy. Letterman jacket wearers occupied top social tiers. Girls dated Letterman jacket boys. Other boys envied them. The jackets signaled masculinity, physical prowess, school loyalty, and popularity. Everything 50s high schools valued. Some athletes lent jackets to steady girlfriends, visible claim of romantic relationships that meant going steady. Girls swimming in oversized varsity jackets advertised their boyfriend's status and their own desirability. Jacket etiquette involved complex unwritten rules about appropriate wear, care, and display. Some schools held formal letter ceremonies, where athletes received awards before audiences. Lettermen formed exclusive clubs, sitting together at lunch, dominating student government, and generally running high school social scenes. Non-athletes, scholars, artists, marginal students existed outside this hierarchy, often resenting the athleticism worship that Letterman jackets symbolized. These jackets represented broader American values: athletic competition, team loyalty, physical achievement over intellectual accomplishment. They created visible social stratification, teaching teenagers that success meant physical dominance and conformity to school spirit, lessons many carried into adult lives, valuing similar hierarchies and tribal identifications. 47. Popular eyeglass styles. 1950s eyeglasses featured distinctive designs reflecting era's aesthetic preferences, with cat-eye frames for women and heavy plastic frames for men becoming decade-defining accessories. Women's cat-eye glasses swept upward at outer edges, creating feline-inspired shape often embellished with rhinestones, metallic accents, or colorful patterns. These frames came in various colors: black, tortoiseshell, pearlescent pink, turquoise, matching outfits and expressing personality within acceptable boundaries. The exaggerated upswept corners emphasized femininity while making bold fashion statements. Stars like Marilyn Monroe popularized cat eyes, cementing their desirability. Men's frames were substantial, thick black or brown plastic in rectangular or slightly rounded shapes, projecting intellectual seriousness. These horn-rimmed glasses suggested thoughtfulness and authority. Politicians, businessmen, and academics wore similar styles. Buddy Holly made thick black frames iconic for younger men, proving glasses could be cool rather than nerdy. Children wore smaller versions of adult styles, often with metal frames considered more durable. Many people requiring vision correction felt self-conscious about glasses despite their prevalence. "Boys don't make passes at girls who wear glasses," reflected cultural bias against bespectacled women. Contact lenses existed but remained expensive, uncomfortable, and uncommon. Opticians were medical professionals. Eyeglass purchasing involved eye examinations and professional fittings. Frames cost significant money. People owned single pairs for years. Broken glasses meant serious inconvenience. Despite prejudices, glasses became fashion accessories for many, particularly women who coordinated frames with wardrobes. These distinctive 50s styles remain recognizable decades later, instantly evoking the era through their characteristic shapes: cat eyes suggesting feminine playfulness, horn rims connoting masculine intellectualism, both reflecting decades' rigid gender distinctions and growing acceptance of corrective eyewear as fashion opportunity. 48. Shopping at department stores. Department stores dominated 1950s retail, serving as community anchors, shopping destinations, and social gathering places, offering vast merchandise selections under single roofs. Downtown flagship stores Macy's, Marshall Field's, Gimbel's, Sears occupied multiple floors in imposing buildings, featuring ornate architecture, elegant elevators operated by uniformed attendants, and pneumatic tube systems whisking payments to central cashiers. Each floor specialized women's fashions, men's clothing, children's departments, housewares, furniture, appliances, staffed by knowledgeable salespeople who assisted customers personally. Shopping involved dressing nicely. Women wore dresses, gloves, and hats, treating store visits as social occasions. Department stores featured amenities, making extended visits comfortable. Tea rooms serving lunch, beauty salons, comfortable sitting areas, and even childcare services. Window displays were elaborate productions, particularly during holidays, drawing crowds to sidewalks. Stores extended credit through charge accounts, allowing middle-class families to purchase beyond immediate means, fueling consumer economy. Catalog departments enabled rural customers to access merchandise, creating national markets. Annual events, white sales, back-to-school promotions, Christmas shopping seasons structured retail calendars. Personal shoppers assisted wealthy clients. Regular customers developed relationships with favorite salespeople. The atmosphere was refined, service-oriented, and unhurried, completely opposite from later discount retail models. Department stores symbolized urban sophistication and consumer prosperity. shopping trips became family excursions or ladies' outings, combining purchasing with social interaction. These stores represented commerce's civilized face, where capitalism met culture through attractive displays, courteous service, and merchandise variety, suggesting abundance and choice. They embodied American consumer culture at its aspirational peak, before suburban malls and discount chains transformed retail landscapes entirely. 49. Homemade clothes and sewing patterns. Home sewing remained essential skill and common practice in 1950s households, with women creating wardrobes for families using patterns, fabric, and considerable expertise. Economic necessity and creative expression combined. Many families couldn't afford extensive store-bought wardrobes, making sewing practical requirement. Additionally, home sewing allowed customization impossible with ready-made clothing. Pattern companies, Simplicity, McCall's, Butterick, Vogue, published new designs regularly, sold at fabric stores and pattern counters in department stores. These paper patterns, packaged in envelopes featuring illustrated models wearing finished garments, included tissue paper pieces, instruction sheets, and fabric requirement specifications. Women studied pattern catalogs like fashion magazines, selecting styles, matching abilities, and needs. Fabric stores offered vast material selections: cottons, wools, silks, synthetic blends in countless colors and prints. Store clerks measured and cut yardage precisely. Notions, buttons, zippers, thread, interfacing, rick-rack, lace-completed shopping lists. Home sewing machines, increasingly common wedding gifts, enabled this production. Women spent hours cutting fabric, pinning patterns, basting, stitching seams, fitting garments, and adding finishing touches. Daughters learned sewing from mothers, passing skills generationally. Home economics classes taught basic techniques. Pride came from well-constructed garments and compliments received. Homemade clothes sometimes revealed economic limitations, imperfect seams, obvious alterations creating class distinctions. However, skilled seamstresses produced garments rivaling store quality. The practice represented self-sufficiency, creativity, and domestic competence. Though ready-to-wear clothing was increasing and improving, home sewing remained widespread, producing everything from simple house dresses to elaborate prom gowns. This skill gave women control over family presentation, budget management, and creative expression within domestic spheres, empowering within limitations. 50. White socks and polished shoes. White athletic socks and meticulously polished leather shoes represented 1950s grooming standards, reflecting broader cultural emphases on neatness, presentation, and attention to detail. White socks became teenage uniform, worn by both boys and girls with saddle shoes, loafers, or sneakers. The socks' brightness symbolized cleanliness and youth. Keeping them white required constant laundering and bleaching. Girls wore ankle-length bobby socks. The term became synonymous with teenage girls themselves, who were called bobby socksers. Boys wore slightly longer crew socks. These socks contrasted sharply with dark shoes, creating clean, sporty appearance. Adults wore darker hosiery, considered more sophisticated, but youth culture embraced white socks' casual freshness. Meanwhile, shoe polishing remained regular ritual for dress shoes. Men and boys owned shoe shine kits containing polished tins, brushes, and buffing cloths. Sunday mornings often included family shoe shining sessions, preparing for church. Applying polish, letting it dry, then buffing to high shine required patience and technique. Polished shoes indicated self-respect, discipline, and attention to standards. Scuffed or dull shoes suggested carelessness or poverty. Military influence again appeared. Servicemen learned boot shining as basic discipline. This transferred to civilian life, where shined shoes signaled professionalism. Shoe shine stands operated in train stations, hotels, and business districts, where men paid for professional shining while reading newspapers. Schools inspected student appearance, including shoe condition. These grooming standards taught children that presentation mattered, details counted, and maintaining appearances required regular effort. White socks and polished shoes, seemingly trivial, actually represented larger values about order, standards, and the visible discipline that characterized 50s culture's emphasis on conformity and presentation. 51. First color televisions emerging. Color television represented 1950s technological frontier, emerging slowly despite enormous marketing hype and public fascination. CBS demonstrated color systems in 1951, but incompatibility with existing black and white sets doomed that approach. RCA's compatible color system, approved in 1953, allowed color broadcasts to appear in black and white on existing sets, enabling gradual transition. However, color television remained luxury throughout the decade. Sets cost $800 to $1,000, multiple months' average salary, placing them beyond most families' budgets. Early color sets were temperamental, unreliable, and required frequent adjustments. Picture tubes were small, color reproduction was poor, and sets were enormous furniture pieces. Most programming remained black and white anyway. NBC led color broadcasting, but other networks resisted expensive conversions. Special programs like the annual Peter Pan broadcast or Tournament of Roses parade advertised color transmission, and appliance stores drew crowds watching color demonstrations through windows. Owners of color sets gained neighborhood status, hosting viewing parties where friends marveled at colored images despite their technical shortcomings. Technicians made regular service calls adjusting complicated electronics. By decade's end, only a few 100,000 color sets existed nationally, tiny fraction of 50 million television households. Black and white remained standard. However, color's promise drove technological development, and knowing it existed changed how people viewed their monochrome sets, adequate but temporary rather than ultimate technology. Color television represented future arriving slowly. Technological progress everyone anticipated but few experienced. It symbolized American innovation and consumer culture's perpetual dissatisfaction, always something newer, better, more expensive to desire, keeping consumption cycles accelerating toward promised tomorrows always just beyond today's reach. 52. Portable transistor radios. Transistor radios revolutionized 1950s electronics, introducing personal, portable entertainment impossible with vacuum tube technology. Texas Instruments and Industrial Development Engineering Associates produced the first commercial transistor radio, the Regency TR 1-inch 1954, priced at $49.95. These pocket-sized devices, powered by small batteries rather than electrical outlets, liberated radio listening from living room consoles. Teenagers particularly embraced transistor radios, carrying them everywhere: beaches, parks, cars, bedrooms, tuning into rock and roll stations their parents couldn't monitor or control. The radio's portability enabled private listening experiences, creating youth culture spaces independent of adult supervision. Early models were expensive, and sound quality was modest, tinny, with limited volume and poor fidelity. However, they improved rapidly while prices dropped. By late decade, transistor radios cost $15 to $25, affordable for teenagers saving allowances or receiving them as gifts. Japanese manufacturers, particularly Sony, entered markets with cheaper models, beginning Japan's electronics industry rise. Transistor radios became fashion accessories, available in various colors and styles, some with leather cases, others in space-age plastics. They featured single earphone jacks for truly private listening. The technology's military origins, miniaturized electronics developed for wartime communications, found peaceful consumer applications. Transistor radios represented technological progress, making electronics accessible, portable, and personal. They democratized media consumption, enabling individual rather than family listening. Parents complained about teenagers isolated with earpieces, ignoring families. These concerns foreshadowed later anxieties about Walkmans, iPods, and smartphones, each generation's portable technology, creating generation gaps. Transistor radios embodied modernity, youth independence, and technological miniaturization that would characterize subsequent decades' electronics evolution. 53. Record players and 45 revolutions per minute singles. Record players and 45 RPM singles transformed 1950s music consumption, making recorded music accessible, affordable, and central to teenage culture. Families owned console stereo systems, large wooden furniture pieces containing turntables, amplifiers, and speakers playing 33 and 1/3 RPM long-playing albums with multiple songs per side. However, teenagers embraced 45 RPM singles, 7-inch vinyl discs with large center holes, playing one song per side, costing 89 cents to $1.29. These 45 seconds made individual song purchases affordable, allowing teenagers to build collections of favorite hits without expensive album investments. Portable record players, compact, often brightly colored, with built-in speakers, became essential bedroom equipment. These could be carried to friends' houses for listening parties. Teenagers spent allowances at record stores, studying Billboard charts, listening to preview copies, and selecting purchases carefully. Singles featured A-sides, the hit song, and B-sides, often lesser-known tracks that occasionally became unexpected favorites. Collecting 45 seconds became serious hobby. Special boxes and carrying cases stored growing collections. The distinctive snap-in yellow or red plastic adapters, allowing 45 seconds to play on standard turntables, became ubiquitous. Jukeboxes in diners and soda fountains relied on 45 seconds, allowing customers to select songs for nickels. Record players required care, needles wore out, required replacement, records scratched easily, diminishing sound quality. Teenagers learned to handle records by edges, return them to sleeves, and clean them carefully. Record listening was active, requiring physical interaction, intentional selection, and focused attention, impossible with modern digital streaming. Gathering around record players, sharing new purchases, singing along to favorite songs created social experiences central to teenage life. These records and players represented youth culture, independence, personal music collections, and technology, enabling teenagers to control their soundtracks. 54. Washing machines, transforming homes. Automatic washing machines revolutionized 1950s domestic labor, liberating women from exhausting manual laundering that had consumed enormous time and physical effort for generations. Previously, washing meant labor-intensive processes, hauling water, heating it on stoves, scrubbing clothes on washboards, wringing by hand, and hanging everything to dry. Wringer washers, semi-automatic machines that agitated clothes, but required manual feeding through rollers. Improved situations somewhat, but remained labor-intensive and dangerous. Fingers caught in wringers caused injuries. Fully automatic washers emerging in the 50s changed everything. These machines filled with water automatically, agitated clothes through wash and rinse cycles, spun them partially dry, then drained all without intervention. Women loaded dirty clothes, added detergent, set dials, and walked away. The transformation was miraculous. What previously consumed entire days now required hours. Multiple loads could be processed while women attended other tasks. Marketing emphasized this liberation, showing smiling housewives with free time for leisure or family. Automatic washers cost $200 to $300, significant investments requiring saving or credit. They became essential appliances, status symbols indicating modernity and progress. Laundromats featuring coin-operated machines served those unable to afford home models, creating social spaces where women gathered while clothes washed. Detergent companies developed products specifically for automatic machines. Advertisements promised cleaner clothes with less effort, appealing to domestic aspirations. Electric dryers, though less common, complemented washers, eliminating clothesline dependence. These appliances represented technological progress, improving women's lives tangibly. Though still responsible for laundry, women spent less time and energy on drudgery. Washing machines symbolized modernity's promised technology, reducing toil, creating leisure, and demonstrating progress through practical improvements in daily living conditions. 55. Refrigerators, replacing iceboxes. Electric refrigerators, completing their replacement of iceboxes during the 1950s, represented major advancement in food preservation, health, and domestic convenience. Though refrigerators existed earlier, widespread adoption occurred this decade as prices decreased and electrical infrastructure expanded. Iceboxes, insulated cabinets, cooled by large ice blocks, delivered regularly by icemen, had served for generations, but were inconvenient, unreliable, and limited. Melting ice required drip pan emptying, temperature control was impossible, and ice deliveries meant scheduled dependencies. Electric refrigerators eliminated these problems. They maintained consistent temperatures, required no ice deliveries, offered larger storage capacity, and included freezer compartments, enabling home freezing impossible previously. New refrigerators were substantial purchases, $200 to $400, often requiring credit plans. They came in cheerful colors: white, pink, turquoise, yellow, matching modern kitchen aesthetics. Rounded corners, chrome handles, and sleek designs made them attractive appliances rather than utilitarian necessities. Manufacturers competed through features: automatic defrosting, adjustable shelves, door storage, larger freezers, ice makers. Marketing emphasized health benefits properly. Refrigerated food prevented spoilage and illness. Advertisements showed them filled with abundant food, suggesting prosperity. Refrigerators changed shopping patterns, less frequent grocery trips since food kept longer. Bulk buying became practical. Frozen food industries expanded, as home freezers could store products. Refrigerators enabled new cooking and entertaining patterns. Cold drinks were always available. Ice cream could be stored. Leftovers kept safely. They symbolized progress. Modern families had modern appliances. Rural electrification programs specifically highlighted refrigeration as civilization's benefit, distinguishing modern life from pioneer hardships. These appliances represented technological progress, improving daily life materially, making homes more convenient, sanitary, and comfortable while supporting expanding consumer food industries. 56. Typewriters in everyday life. Typewriters remained essential 1950s communication tools, ubiquitous in offices, schools, and many homes before computers eliminated their necessity. These mechanical devices, primarily manual models requiring physical key-striking force, produced printed text faster and more legibly than handwriting. Offices depended entirely on typewriters for correspondence, reports, contracts, and documentation. Secretaries, overwhelmingly female, were valued employees whose typing skills drove business operations. Typing pools in large companies housed dozens of women producing documents. The staccato rhythm of multiple typewriters created distinctive office soundscapes. IBM and Remington dominated the market. Underwood and Royal competed. Electric typewriters were emerging but remained expensive. Most people used manual models requiring significant finger strength. Typewriter ribbons, correction fluids, carbon paper, and onion skin for copies were standard supplies. Mistakes required retyping entire pages or careful erasing and retyping over errors. This difficulty meant careful proofreading and planning before typing final versions. Touch typing without looking at keys was essential skill taught in schools, primarily to girls preparing for secretarial careers. Typewriters represented career pathways but also limitations. Women typically typed while men dictated. Nonetheless, typing skills provided employment and independence. Portable typewriters enabled writing anywhere. Journalists, authors, students used them. The mechanical precision, physical engagement, and permanence of typewritten words contrasted sharply with digital writing's fluidity. Typewriters represented professionalism and official communication. Typed documents carried authority, handwritten ones lacked. Their presence in homes indicated educational aspirations or professional work. These machines symbolized information age technologies, essential tools enabling modern bureaucratic, commercial, and creative work, requiring documented communication foundations of contemporary information society. 57. Cameras and family photo albums. Photography became accessible to average 1950s families through affordable cameras and simplified film processing, creating visual documentation, traditions fundamentally shaping how families recorded and remembered their lives. Kodak dominated the consumer market, with Brownie cameras costing $5 to $20. Simple box cameras requiring minimal technical knowledge. Families photographed holidays, birthdays, vacations, graduations, and everyday moments, creating visual narratives of domestic life. Film came in rolls requiring careful loading in darkroom-like conditions or bright sunlight. Each roll contained 8, 12, or 24 exposures, finite, precious shots, demanding thoughtful composition. No instant preview existed. Photographers hoped exposures worked, discovering results only after film processing. Drugstores and photoshops processed film, returning negatives and prints in envelopes after days or weeks. Slides, color transparencies, projected on screens or walls were popular for vacation documentation, with families hosting slideshow evenings that tested guests' patience. Photo albums became treasured possessions, where families preserved memories chronologically, annotating images with captions, dates, and names. These leather-bound or decorated albums occupied honored positions on coffee tables or shelves. Looking through albums was family activity, remembering events, identifying relatives, telling stories inspired by frozen moments. Instant cameras like Polaroid emerged late decade, producing immediate prints magical but expensive. Photography taught delayed gratification, waiting for processing, anticipating results, accepting occasional failures. The physical, tangible nature of prints, negatives, and albums created permanent records that digital photography's ephemeral nature later challenged. These photographs became family heirlooms, tangible connections to past generations. Photography democratized memory preservation, allowing ordinary families to create visual legacies previously available only through portraits from professional studios. 58. Automobiles with tail fins and chrome. 1950s automobiles epitomized American automotive design excess, featuring dramatic tail fins, abundant chrome trim, and space-age styling reflecting post-war optimism and jet-age fascination. Designers drew inspiration from aircraft, incorporating elements suggesting speed, modernity, and technological progress. Tail fins emerged on Cadillacs in late 40s, growing progressively larger and more exaggerated throughout the 50s. By 1959, Cadillac fins reached absurd heights, pointed, dramatic, and aerodynamically useless but visually striking. Other manufacturers followed: Plymouth, Dodge, Chevrolet, Ford, though none matched Cadillac's extremes. Chrome adorned everything: bumpers, grills, trim, hubcaps, creating gleaming, attention-grabbing vehicles. Two-tone paint schemes, white wall tires, and wraparound windshields completed the look. Interiors featured bench seats, push-button automatic transmissions, and dashboard designs mimicking aircraft cockpits. These cars were enormous, long, wide, heavy, with powerful V8 engines consuming gasoline voraciously. Fuel economy mattered little when gasoline cost 30 cents per gallon. Annual model changes encouraged regular purchasing. Styling updates made previous year's cars appear outdated. Planned obsolescence drove consumer culture, convincing Americans to trade perfectly functional vehicles for newer models. Automobiles represented status, freedom, and identity. Suburban sprawl depended on car ownership. Families needed vehicles for shopping, commuting, and leisure. Teenagers coveted cars representing independence and dating opportunities. Drive-in theaters and restaurants catered to automobile culture. Car design reflected American confidence: bigger was better, excess was admirable, technology was destiny. Critics later condemned this era's wasteful excess and styling over substance. However, these vehicles captured period's optimism and exuberance. They remain iconic, instantly recognizable symbols of 50s America: confident, prosperous, technologically optimistic, and stylistically excessive, embodying decades' cultural characteristics in gleaming chrome and soaring tail fins. 59. Polio vaccine breakthrough. The polio vaccine's development represented 1950's greatest medical triumph, eliminating disease that had terrorized families for generations. Poliomyelitis caused paralysis, iron lung confinement, or death, primarily attacking children. Annual summer epidemics closed swimming pools, theaters, and public gatherings, as frightened parents tried protecting children from invisible contagion. President Franklin Roosevelt's polio history made the disease nationally significant. The March of Dimes raised research funds through grassroots campaigns collecting dimes from schoolchildren. Dr. Jonas Salk developed killed virus vaccine, tested in 1954 in history's largest medical trial. Over 1.8 million children participated, called Polio Pioneers. Results announced April 12, 1955 proved vaccine safe and effective. Church bells rang, factories stopped, celebrations swept the nation. Salk became instant hero. Mass vaccination campaigns began immediately. Schools administered shots using jet injectors or traditional needles. Parents eagerly had children vaccinated despite typical vaccine hesitancy. Polio fear overwhelmed other concerns. Sugar cubes later delivered oral vaccine developed by Dr. Albert Sabin, making administration easier. Within years, polio cases dropped dramatically, tens of thousands annually to mere hundreds. Iron wards in hospitals emptied. The disease that had haunted generations essentially disappeared. This triumph demonstrated medical science's power, government-funded research's value, and public health campaigns' effectiveness. It represented post-war optimism, justified technology and organization could solve even terrifying problems. Salk refused, patenting the vaccine, making it freely available worldwide, exemplifying scientific altruism. The polio vaccine's success created lasting confidence in vaccination, medical authority, and progress through science. It saved countless lives, prevented immeasurable suffering, and proved that collective action could defeat devastating diseases, establishing foundation for future vaccine programs. eliminating or controlling other infectious diseases worldwide. 60. Payphones on street corners. Payphones represented 1950s essential public communication infrastructure, providing universal telephone access before personal mobile devices made them obsolete. These coin-operated telephones occupied weatherproof booths or wall-mounted stations throughout cities, towns, and highways. The iconic phone booth glass and aluminum enclosure, providing weather protection and minimal privacy, became cultural symbol. Making calls required correct change nickels initially, later dimes inserted after dialing, with operators instructing, "Deposit 10 cents please for long-distance calls." Callers heard distinctive tones as coins dropped through mechanisms. Limited conversation time meant concise communication. Additional coins extended calls. Phone books hung from chains, providing number lookup often vandalized or missing. Payphones served essential functions. Travelers called home. Workers contacted families. Emergencies were reported. Teenagers made plans without home phone monopolization. Booth privacy enabled confidential conversations impossible in shared home environments. The phone's reliability and ubiquity created social safety nets. Stranded motorists called for help. Lost individuals requested directions. Urgent messages reached their destinations. "Call me from a payphone" meant untraceable communication. Movies and television used dramatic payphone scenes constantly. Superman changed clothes in phone booths, cultural reference everyone understood. The phones represented democratic communication. Access anyone with correct change could reach anyone anywhere. However, they also highlighted economic disparities. Some families lacked home phones, depending entirely on payphones for communications. Vandalism plagued payphones, broken coin returns, damaged equipment, graffiti-covered booths. Despite problems, they provided essential infrastructure, connecting mobile, increasingly complex society. Their eventual disappearance marked significant cultural shift toward personal, portable communication devices, eliminating shared public communication spaces and the peculiar social interactions and dependencies they created. Payphones represented community infrastructure, shared resources requiring civic responsibility and collective maintenance concepts, increasingly foreign and individualized, privatized modern telecommunications where everyone carries personal devices, eliminating need for public communication access points that once connected strangers, travelers, and those without means to broader communication networks essential for navigating daily life. 61. Riding bikes until sunset. Bicycle riding epitomized 1950s childhood freedom, with children spending entire days exploring neighborhoods, parks, and surrounding areas on two wheels until darkness forced returns home. Bikes represented independence transportation, enabling adventures beyond walking distance without requiring parental chauffeuring. Most children owned simple, sturdy bikes. Schwinn, Huffy, or Murray models passed down from siblings or purchased new for birthdays or Christmas. Boys' bikes featured horizontal top bars. Girls' bikes had lower curved frames accommodating skirts. Banana seats and high-rise handlebars emerged late decade. Children customized bikes with playing cards clothespin to spokes, creating motorcycle-like sounds, handlebar streamers, baskets, bells, and reflectors. Training wheels helped beginners. Skinned knees marked learning processes. Bike riding taught mechanical skills, fixing flat tires, adjusting chains, oiling parts. Groups of children rode together, racing, performing tricks, creating elaborate games. They biked to friends' houses, stores, swimming pools, parks, and secret hideouts. Parents imposed few restrictions. Be home by sunset or be home for dinner were typical rules. Children interpreted these liberally, pushing boundaries until streetlights flickered on. Bike theft was relatively rare. Most neighborhoods felt safe. Children left bikes on lawns overnight without worry. Riding provided exercise, adventure, and social interaction without organized activities or adult supervision. These unsupervised hours taught navigation, risk assessment, problem-solving, and independence. Modern parents' concerns about traffic, strangers, and safety have largely eliminated this freedom. But 50s children experienced remarkable autonomy, spending summer days ranging miles from home on bicycles, returning sunburned and exhausted from adventures entirely their own creation, fostering self-reliance and confidence through unstructured, unsupervised play. 62. Playing stickball in the street. Stickball dominated 1950s urban street life. adapting baseball to city environments where vacant lots and fields didn't exist. This improvised game required minimal equipment, broomsticks or mop handles for bats, rubber balls, typically Spalding high-bounce pink rubber balls, and city streets for playing fields. Manhole covers became bases, parked cars defined foul lines, and building walls served as backstops. Neighborhood kids gathered spontaneously, choosing teams, establishing ground rules, accommodating specific street configurations. Two sewers described home run distances, hitting balls beyond two manhole covers. Windows were constant hazards. Broken glass meant angry adults and fleeing children. Stickball developed remarkable hand-eye coordination. Hitting small, bouncing balls with narrow sticks required skill exceeding regular baseball. Pitchers bounced balls toward batters or threw overhand depending on local rules. Fielders positioned throughout streets, dodging occasional traffic. Car was universal warning, sending players scrambling to curbs until vehicles passed. Games lasted hours, scores reaching ridiculous numbers. Arguments over rules, fair divided by foul determinations, and outcalls were constant but resolved through negotiation. No adults officiated. Ethnic neighborhoods developed distinctive stickball cultures. Italian, Irish, Jewish, Puerto Rican kids all played, sometimes together, sometimes in separate groups. The game built community, teaching cooperation, competition, and conflict resolution. It required creativity, adaptability, and making do with available resources. Stickball represented urban childhood's ingenuity, transforming concrete playgrounds into ballparks through imagination and determination. Though traffic increases and safety concerns eventually diminished street play, stickball remained powerful memory for urban baby boomers, symbolizing childhood freedom, neighborhood community, and the creativity children displayed when left to entertain themselves. 63. Backyard barbecues. Backyard barbecues became quintessential 1950s leisure activity, combining suburban homeownership, outdoor entertaining, and America's love affair with grilled meat. Post-war suburban expansion meant families owned yards, private outdoor spaces perfect for entertaining. Barbecue grills evolved from simple braziers to elaborate kettle designs like Weber's iconic dome-shaped model, introduced in 1952. These charcoal-fueled devices became essential patio equipment, alongside folding lawn chairs, picnic tables, and citronella candles. Fathers dominated grilling, one of few cooking tasks culturally assigned to men. Wearing aprons with humorous slogans, wielding long-handled spatulas and forks, men tended fires, flipped burgers and steaks, and proclaimed themselves grill masters. This outdoor cooking maintained masculine identity while participating in meal preparation. Typical fare included hamburgers, hot dogs, steaks, and chicken, accompanied by potato salad, coleslaw, baked beans, corn on the cob, and watermelon. Meals were casual, eaten on paper plates with plastic utensils. Children played in yards while adults socialized, drinking beer, lemonade, or iced tea. Barbecues provided informal entertaining. Neighbors, co-workers, and friends gathered without formal dinner party pressures. The events exemplified suburban lifestyle property ownership, enabling outdoor living, leisure time for socializing, and casual entertaining, reflecting democratic informality versus stuffy formality. Lighter fluid, charcoal smoke, and sizzling meat created distinctive sensory experiences. Evening barbecues extended into darkness, with citronella torches and patio lights illuminating gatherings. These events built neighborhood communities, reinforced gender roles, and celebrated suburban prosperity. Barbecues represented American lifestyle that combined outdoor recreation, casual socializing, and meat-centered meals, cultural patterns that persisted for decades, defining suburban summer life. 64. Roller skating rinks. Roller skating rinks provided popular 1950s entertainment venues where children, teenagers, and families glided across polished wooden floors to organ music or phonograph records. These indoor facilities offered year-round recreation regardless of weather, combining physical activity, social interaction, and musical entertainment. Admission typically cost 50 cents to $1. Skate rentals added small fees. The distinctive tan leather quad skates, 4 wheels in rectangular configuration, were tightened around shoes using Allen wrenches or keys. Children wore on strings around necks. Beginners wobbled unsteadily, clutching railings circling the rink, while experienced skaters demonstrated speed, grace, and tricks. Skating direction reversed periodically. All skate meant counterclockwise, reverse skate, change direction. Special sessions included couples skating, races, and games like limbo or balloon popping contests. The hokey pokey and other group activities created participation fun. Teenage romance flourished during couples skates when lights dimmed and slow songs played. Boys asked girls to skate together, holding hands while circling the rink. Snack bars sold candy, popcorn, and sodas. The atmosphere combined recreational facility and social club. Birthday parties at skating rinks became popular celebrations. Skilled skaters impressed audiences with spins, jumps, and backward skating. Organ music, distinctive, slightly carnival-like, became synonymous with roller skating. Though recorded music increasingly replaced live organists. Rinks developed devoted followings. Some people skated weekly throughout lives. The activity provided accessible exercise requiring minimal athletic ability. Almost anyone could learn basic skating. Rinks represented community gathering places, supervised teen hangouts, and family entertainment spaces where generations mixed. Children gained independence, and social hierarchies shifted as skating ability, rather than other attributes, determined status and admiration. 65. Summer camp traditions. Summer camps became significant 1950s childhood experiences, sending millions of children away from homes for weeks of outdoor activities, skill development, and independence building. Camps ranged from rustic wilderness programs to organized facilities, offering diverse activities. Sleepaway camps, where children resided for 1 to 8 weeks, represented major adventures and separation anxieties. Parents kissed tearful or excited children goodbye as buses departed for distant mountains, lakes, or forests. Camps emphasized outdoor skills: swimming, canoeing, archery, horseback riding, hiking, crafts, and campfires. Cabins housed groups of same-age children supervised by young adult counselors. Bunk beds, communal bathrooms, and minimal privacy contrasted sharply with home comforts. Camp names were distinctively optimistic or Native American-themed: Camp Sunshine, Pine Ridge, Walden, though cultural appropriation concerns didn't exist then. Daily schedules structured activities: morning flag raising, meals in mess halls, rotation through activity periods, rest times, evening campfires featuring songs, skits, and ghost stories. Traditional camp songs: Kumbaya, Michael Row the Boat Ashore, Found a Peanut, united generations. Color wars divided camps into competing teams for multi-day tournaments. Camp taught independence, cooperation, outdoor skills, and resilience. Children made friendships intensified by shared experiences, writing letters home describing adventures. Parents received occasional updates but mostly trusted camp staff. Homesickness affected some children intensely. Camp romance crushes, first kisses, teenage drama created lasting memories. Jewish, Christian, and non-sectarian camps served different communities. Some camps focused on specific interests: music, science, sports. Summer camp represented middle-class privilege, significant expense, limiting access. However, for those attending, camps provided transformative experiences, confidence building, independence development, and cherished memories lasting lifetimes, establishing traditions families maintained generationally. 66. Hopscotch, jump rope, marbles. Simple playground games requiring minimal equipment dominated 1950s children's recreational time, fostering physical skills, social interaction, and cultural transmission across generations. Hopscotch involved chalk-drawn numbered squares on sidewalks or playgrounds, where players tossed stones and hopped through patterns on one foot, avoiding squares containing markers. Variations existed regionally, but basic principles remained consistent. Girls primarily played hopscotch, though not exclusively. The game taught balance, coordination, turn-taking, and rule-following. Jump rope, both individual and group activity, featured endless rhyming chants, passed orally through generations. Miss Mary Mac, Teddy Bear, and hundreds more accompanied rhythmic jumping. Double Dutch, 2 ropes turning simultaneously, required skill and timing. Groups of girls gathered during recess, taking turns jumping while others turned ropes and chanted. These games created inclusive communities. Children of varying abilities could participate. Marbles attracted primarily boys, though again not exclusively. Players knelt in dirt or marked circles, using shooter marbles to knock opponents' marbles from rings. Keepsies meant winners kept captured marbles. Fair meant return after games. Marble collections became prized possessions. Cat's eyes, Aggies, Steelies, each type valued differently. Serious players developed techniques, strategies, and reputations. These games required no purchase beyond chalk, rope, or inexpensive marbles. They thrived in schools, neighborhoods, and parks. Children taught newcomers, passing traditions naturally. Games varied by region, ethnicity, and neighborhood, creating local cultures. They provided exercise, competition, cooperation, and social bonding without adult organization or supervision. Modern structured activities and electronic entertainment largely displaced these traditional games, but they represented children's culture, created and maintained by children themselves, democratic, accessible, and endlessly adaptable traditions, connecting generations through shared play experiences. 67. Collecting baseball cards. Baseball card collecting became a passionate hobby for 1950s boys, creating miniature economies, social hierarchies, and sports knowledge acquisition systems. Topps dominated the market after 1952, producing cards packaged with flat pink bubblegum slabs. 5-cent packs contained 5 to 7 cards plus gum that quickly hardened and flavored cards with distinctive taste. Boys ripped open wax paper wrappers, checking immediately for favorite players or rare cards. Cards featured player photographs on fronts, some color, some black and white with statistics, biographical information, and cartoons on backs. Certain cards were scarcer, more valuable rookie cards, star players, or simply random short-printed numbers. The 1952 Mickey Mantle card became legendary, though initially just another card. Children amassed collections stored in shoeboxes, organized by team, position, or personal preference. Trading cards became serious business complex negotiations, balanced team loyalty against player value. I'll trade you 3 commons for that. Willie Mays required mathematical calculations and persuasive arguments. Some kids were shrewd traders, others were easily manipulated, flipping cards, tossing them against walls. Closest card winning provided gambling-like excitement. Some mothers threw away collections during spring cleaning tragedies when cards later became valuable. Cards taught statistics, geography, team compositions, and player histories. Boys memorized batting averages, ERAs, and positions. Card backs provided reading practice and information absorption. Collecting created community. Boys gathered, trading, discussing players, and building relationships through shared interests. The hobby combined sports fandom, collecting impulses, social interaction, and economic education. Though initially considered disposable entertainment, surviving cards became valuable collectibles, with pristine vintage cards selling for thousands or millions of dollars, vindicating childhood obsessions parents dismissed as wasteful. 68. Neighborhood swimming pools. Swimming pools, both public and private, became central to 1950s summer recreation, providing relief from heat, social gathering spaces, and democratized aquatic access. Public municipal pools, built through New Deal programs or post-war recreation initiatives, served neighborhoods and entire communities. These large concrete basins filled with chlorinated water attracted hundreds daily during summer months. Admission cost minimal amounts, often free or 25 cents, making swimming accessible across economic classes. Pools enforced strict rules: mandatory showers before entering, no running on decks, swim tests determining deep-end access, periodic adult swim sessions clearing children out. Lifeguards, typically teenagers or young adults in red suits, maintained order, taught lessons, and performed occasional rescues. Pools created social spaces where neighborhood children gathered daily, developing friendships, romantic interests, and community connections. Mothers brought young children during mornings. Teenagers dominated afternoons. Pool culture included cannonball contests, diving board tricks, underwater swimming competitions, and general horseplay. Concession stands sold candy, chips, and drinks. Locker rooms smelled of chlorine, sweat, and mildew. Shower facilities were communal and cold. Meanwhile, private backyard pools began appearing in wealthy suburbs, initially concrete installations costing thousands, later cheaper above-ground models. These represented ultimate status symbols: pool parties, nighttime swimming, exclusive access. However, public pools remained primary aquatic access for most families. Swimming taught water safety, physical fitness, and confidence. Pools occasionally faced integration conflicts in some regions, reflecting broader civil rights struggles. Despite tensions, pools generally provided inclusive recreation, where children from diverse backgrounds interacted. Summer memories centered on swimming, the shock of cold water, chlorine-red eyes, waterlogged fingers, and exhausted contentment after hours in pools, creating nostalgic associations between swimming and carefree childhood summers. 69. Picnics at the park. Park picnics represented 1950s family leisure, combining outdoor recreation, simple meals, and accessible entertainment, requiring minimal expense. Public parks' legacies of progressive-era reforms provided green spaces with playgrounds, open fields, picnic tables, and sometimes facilities like bathhouses or pavilions. Sunday afternoons found families loading cars with picnic baskets, blankets, and sporting equipment, heading to local parks for afternoon outings. Mothers prepared portable meals, fried chicken, sandwiches, potato salad, deviled eggs, cookies, lemonade in thermoses packed in wicker baskets or cardboard boxes, checkered tablecloths spread across wooden picnic tables or grass transformed ordinary food into special occasions. Fathers supervised children, played catch, or napped under trees while mothers managed food and younger children. Kids climbed on playground equipment, played tag, flew kites, or explored park perimeters. Parks accommodated multi-generational gatherings, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, meeting for reunions. Some parks featured bandshells hosting free concerts. Families attended with blankets, sitting on lawns enjoying music. Parks democratized recreation. Everyone could access them regardless of economic status. They provided nature exposure for urban families, open space for running and playing, and community gathering places. Picnics required minimal expense beyond food costs, making them Depression-era and post-war favorites for budget-conscious entertainment. The outings taught children outdoor etiquette, cleaning up trash, respecting nature, sharing spaces with others. Parks hosted birthday parties, company picnics, church gatherings, and neighborhood events. These green spaces represented public investment in community well-being, providing essential recreational infrastructure. Picnics embodied simple pleasures, fresh air, family time, outdoor meals, and unstructured play representing leisure accessible to ordinary families without expensive equipment, admissions, or specialized facilities, simply requiring packed meals and willingness to spend afternoons outdoors, enjoying public spaces created for communal benefit. 70. Fireworks on the 4th of July. 4th of July celebrations reached peak American enthusiasm during the 1950s, combining patriotic fervor, community gatherings, and spectacular fireworks displays that captivated audiences and reinforced national identity. Independence Day was unambiguously patriotic. No controversy clouded celebrations of American exceptionalism and freedom. Communities organized elaborate festivities, morning parades featuring veterans, marching bands, decorated floats, and beauty queens waving from convertibles. Flags adorned homes, businesses, and public spaces. Families dressed in red, white, and blue, attending picnics, baseball games, and community events. Evening brought fireworks, the celebration's climax. Cities and towns sponsored professional displays launched from parks, fairgrounds, or waterfronts. Families arrived early, claiming viewing spots with blankets and lawn chairs. Anticipation built as darkness fell. Finally, the first rocket shrieked skyward, exploding in colored sparks, and crowds gasped collectively. Boom after boom echoed as pyrotechnicians launched shells, creating chrysanthemums, willows, palms, and other patterns. Grand finales rapid-fire multiple shells, creating thunderous noise, and light left audiences awestruck. Between professional displays, families purchased legal fireworks, sparklers, fountains, Roman candles, firecrackers for home celebrations. Children waved sparklers, tracing light patterns in darkness. Fathers ignited larger fireworks while families watched from safe distances. The sulfur smell, smoke clouds, and scattered paper debris marked successful celebrations. Injuries from fireworks misuse, burned hands, lost fingers, eye damage prompted safety warnings largely ignored. The day represented pure Americana, patriotic pride without irony, community solidarity, and shared national identity. Cold War context intensified celebrations. American freedom contrasted with Soviet oppression. These celebrations taught children national history, civic identity, and belonging to something larger than themselves. 4th of July embodied post-war confidence, patriotic consensus, and uncomplicated national pride that later generations would question but 50s Americans embraced wholeheartedly. 71. Jukeboxes in diners. Jukeboxes became iconic fixtures in 1950s diners, soda fountains, and restaurants, providing musical entertainment, atmosphere, and youth culture expression through coin-operated record players featuring dramatic designs and extensive song selections. These magnificent machines, manufactured primarily by Wurlitzer, Seeberg, and Rockola, were engineering and artistic marvels. Colorful, illuminated plastics, chrome trim, and visible mechanical components created visual spectacles. Bubbling tubes, rotating colored lights, and Art Deco or streamlined modern designs made jukeboxes furniture centerpieces. They operated simply. Customers deposited nickels or dimes, flipped through visible title cards listing available songs, pressed selection buttons, and watched mechanical arms retrieve and play chosen records on internal turntables. Sound emerged through powerful speakers, filling establishments with music. Song selections reflected current hits, regional preferences, and establishment clientele: rock and roll, rhythm and blues, country, pop crooners. Jukeboxes gave teenagers unprecedented control over public soundscapes. Groups pooled change, selecting multiple songs, effectively programming restaurant atmospheres. This empowered youth culture, letting them assert musical preferences over adult tastes. Jukebox selections sparked conversations, dancing, and romance. Certain songs became couples songs, special requests marking relationships. Jukeboxes generated significant revenue. Popular machines earned hundreds weekly from 5-cent plays. Route operators maintained machines, swapping records to keep selections current. Some establishments featured tabletop satellite selectors, smaller units at each booth connecting to central jukeboxes, providing convenience. Jukeboxes democratized music access before personal radios became portable. They represented technological marvel, complex mechanisms, reliably performing thousands of operations. They embodied youth culture spaces where teenagers controlled environments, asserting identity through musical choices. These glowing musical monuments to 50s culture became nostalgic symbols of an era when public music required physical presence, shared spaces, and coins dropping into slots activating mechanical magic. 72. Rockabilly and rhythm and blues. Rockabilly and rhythm and blues represented 1950s musical innovation and cultural collision, combining country, blues, and gospel traditions into exciting new sounds that energized youth culture while alarming adults. Rockabilly rock and roll's country-influenced variant featured upright bass, twangy electric guitars, slapping rhythms, and hiccuping vocals. Artists like Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, and early Elvis Presley created wild, uninhibited music, celebrating youth, rebellion, and sexuality. Sun Records in Memphis became rockabilly's epicenter, where Sam Phillips recorded raw, energetic performances. Blue Suede Shoes, Great Balls of Fire, and That's All Right exemplified the style, driving rhythms, simple lyrics, infectious energy. Meanwhile, rhythm and blues music created by and for black audiences crossed racial boundaries as white teenagers discovered artists like Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Fats Domino, and Ray Charles. R&B combined blues, jazz, and gospel, featuring prominent rhythms, emotional vocals, and sophisticated musicianship. White rock and roll borrowed heavily, often crediting white performers for black innovations. This cultural appropriation had complicated dynamics. White artists achieved mainstream success, performing black-originated music while black artists faced segregated venues and limited radio play. However, music also built bridges. Integrated audiences at rock shows challenged segregation, with music transcending racial barriers despite society's resistance. Adults condemned both rockabilly and R&B as primitive, sexual, and racially inappropriate. Religious leaders denounced them as sinful. Segregationists opposed racial mixing implied by shared musical appreciation. This opposition intensified. Youth appeal music parents hated became irresistible. These genres represented cultural transformation, rural Southern sounds and urban black music, merging into revolutionary new forms that redefined popular music, challenged social boundaries, and provided soundtracks for emerging youth culture, refusing to accept previous generations' musical and social restrictions. 73. Teen record collections. Record collecting became a defining activity for 1950s teenagers, creating personal music libraries that expressed identity, facilitated social bonding, and provided endless listening pleasure. Teenagers spent allowances, birthday money, and job earnings building collections that reflected developing tastes and cultural allegiances. Long-playing 33 1/3 RPM albums cost $3 to $5, significant investments requiring careful selection. These albums featured multiple songs, album art, and liner notes providing context and information. However, 45 RPM singles costing under $1.50 were more accessible, allowing teenagers to purchase individual hit songs without full album commitments. Collections grew gradually: weekly trips to record stores, birthday gifts, holiday presents. Teenagers organized records carefully, storing them in portable cases or designated shelves, handling vinyl respectfully to prevent scratches. Album covers became artistic statements. Teenagers displayed favorites prominently, using them as bedroom decoration. Collections reflected personal identity. Rock and roll enthusiasts owned Elvis, Chuck Berry, and Little Richard. Others preferred pop crooners or folk music. Trading and borrowing records between friends created social currency and trust. Record parties, gatherings where teenagers brought favorite albums to share, combined musical appreciation with socializing. These collections represented substantial investments of limited resources, making them precious possessions. Siblings fought over access. Parents complained about volume and musical choices. Collections grew throughout adolescence, documenting musical evolution and personal development. Some teenagers amassed hundreds of records, becoming neighborhood DJs or acknowledged experts. These physical collections created tangible relationships with music. Selecting, purchasing, transporting, organizing, and playing required active engagement impossible with later digital formats. Record collections embodied youth culture autonomy, teenagers controlling personal soundtracks, expressing identities, and building communities around shared musical passions that parents frequently dismissed or condemned. 74. High school dance parties. High school dances represented crucial 1950s social events, where teenagers navigated romance, social hierarchies, and identity formation within supervised settings, combining music, decoration, and adolescent drama. Schools organized dances throughout the year: homecoming, winter formal, Valentine's Day, spring fling, and the culminating prom. These events transformed gymnasiums or cafeterias into magical spaces through decorations, streamers, balloons, themed sets created by student committees. Live bands or disc jockeys provided music mixing rock and roll, pop ballads, and slower songs encouraging close dancing. Attendance involved elaborate preparation. Girls shopped for dresses, coordinated with friends, arranged hairstyles and makeup. Boys secured dates, rented tuxedos or wore best suits, purchased corsages. Asking someone to dances involved nerve-wracking social risk. Rejection meant public humiliation. Acceptance brought joy and status. Couples, groups, and individuals attended. Going dateless was acceptable, though slightly disappointing. The events featured unwritten social choreographies. Arriving fashionably late, greeting friends, evaluating others' outfits, claiming territory in gym, working courage to dance. Slow songs brought couples together. Fast songs allowed group dancing and individual expression. Wallflowers suffered through unchosen dances. Popular kids dominated floors. Chaperones, teachers, and parents monitored behavior, ensuring appropriate distance during slow dances and ejecting rule breakers. Spiked punch and parking lot makeout sessions tested boundaries. After parties at restaurants or homes extended evenings. These dances created lasting memories: first kisses, relationship beginnings or endings, friendship bonding, and occasional heartbreak. They represented supervised adolescent independence, young people navigating adult situations with minimal interference. Dances taught social skills, revealed social positions, and provided rites of passage. They embodied teenage life's joys and anxieties, combining excitement, insecurity, romance, and community within few hours of music, decoration, and supervised celebration. 75. Sock hops in gyms. Sock hops, informal dances where students removed shoes. Dancing in socks or stockings on gymnasium floors became quintessential. 1950s high school social events, more casual than formal dances, but equally important for teenage social life. The sock hop name derived from practical necessity. Street shoes damaged gymnasium floors, so students removed them, dancing in socks. This created relaxed, informal atmosphere, contrasting with dress-up occasions. Sock hops occurred after football games, during lunch periods, or weekend afternoons, frequent, accessible events requiring minimal preparation. Admission cost quarters or 50 cents. Disc jockeys or record players provided music rock and roll dominated, with Elvis, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and Buddy Holly favorites. Dancing styles were energetic. Jitterbug, hand jive, stroll. Students formed circles watching talented dancers perform. Others coupled off or danced in groups. The gymnasium's institutional setting, hardwood floors, basketball hoops, bleachers, transformed into teenage territory. Decorations were minimal, maybe a few streamers or a hand-painted banner. The emphasis was music, dancing, and socializing rather than formal romance. Sock hops democratized school dances, less expensive, less formal, more frequent. Students who couldn't afford formal dance expenses attended sock hops comfortably. The events built school spirit, provided supervised entertainment, and allowed teenagers to interact outside academic contexts. Dress was casual, girls wore poodle skirts or nice clothes. Boys wore jeans or slacks, but nothing fancy. Sock hops represented youth culture spaces where rock and roll thrived despite adult disapproval. Chaperones maintained order, but generally allowed more relaxed behavior than formal dances. These events created communal experiences, entire schools sharing music, movement, and momentary freedom from academic pressures. Sock hops embodied 50s teenage life's informality, accessibility, and emerging distinct youth culture, establishing identity separate from adult-controlled formal occasions. 76. Popular crooners, like Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra and fellow crooners represented 1950s musical establishment, appealing primarily to adults and parents while rock and roll captured teenage attention. Sinatra, already famous since 1940s, reached artistic peak during the 50s, with Capitol Records albums showcasing mature, sophisticated artistry. His smooth baritone voice, impeccable phrasing, and emotional depth created timeless recordings. Albums like Songs for Young Lovers, In the Wee Small Hours, and Come Fly With Me demonstrated popular music could be artistically serious. Other crooners included Dean Martin, Perry Como, Tony Bennett, Nat King Cole, and Bing Crosby, each with distinctive styles but sharing emphasis on vocal technique, orchestral arrangements, and romantic lyrics. These performers represented pre-rock music era, rooted in big band traditions and Tin Pan Alley songwriting. They performed in nightclubs, concert halls, and on television variety shows. Their music emphasized melody, harmony, and lyrical sophistication, qualities rock and roll deliberately rejected or simplified. Parents loved crooners. Teenagers found them boring or irrelevant, preferring rock's raw energy. This generational divide marked significant cultural shift for the first time. Parents and children embraced fundamentally different musical styles reflecting different values and sensibilities. Crooners represented adult sophistication, romantic maturity, and musical craftsmanship. Their concerts attracted well-dressed audiences who sat attentively. Rock shows featured screaming teenagers. However, crooners maintained commercial success. Despite rock's rise, their audience was older, wealthier, and loyal. Sinatra particularly transcended generational boundaries. Even teenagers recognized his artistry. His Rat Pack persona, cool, confident, masculine, appealed across ages. These crooners represented musical continuity with pre-war traditions, demonstrating that quality, sophisticated popular music could coexist with rock and roll's revolutionary sounds, serving different audiences and fulfilling different emotional and aesthetic needs within rapidly diversifying American musical landscape. 77. Jazz and swing. Lingering in nightclubs. Jazz and swing, dominant popular music forms from 1920s through 40s, continued thriving in 1950s nightclubs, underground scenes, and among dedicated audiences despite rock and roll's commercial dominance. These sophisticated musical styles evolved significantly during the decade. Big band swing declined commercially, maintaining orchestras was expensive, and youth tastes shifted, but smaller jazz combos flourished. Bebop, developed in the 40s by Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, matured into complex, intellectually demanding music, appreciated by aficionados rather than mass audiences. Cool jazz emerged on the West Coast, featuring Miles Davis, Dave Brubeck, and Chet Baker, emphasizing subtlety, restraint, and classical influences. Hard bop developed on the East Coast, incorporating blues and gospel elements through artists like Art Blakey, Horace Silver, and Clifford Brown. Jazz clubs, intimate venues, serving alcohol to adult audiences, provided spaces where musicians performed nightly, developing their craft and attracting devoted fans. New York's clubs, the Five Spot, Birdland, Village Vanguard, became legendary. These were adult spaces emphasizing listening, appreciating musicianship, and sophisticated nightlife. Jazz represented cultural sophistication, artistic seriousness, and bohemian intellectualism. Beatniks claimed jazz as their soundtrack, discussing philosophy in coffee houses while jazz played. Racial dynamics complicated jazz. Black musicians created the art form, but often performed for white audiences in segregated venues. However, jazz also pioneered integration, with racially mixed bands and audiences challenging segregation. College students and intellectuals embraced jazz, attending concerts and collecting albums. Jazz education began entering universities, legitimizing it as serious art. While teenagers danced to rock and roll, adult sophisticates appreciated jazz's complexity, improvisation, and emotional depth. Jazz represented American cultural achievement, artistic innovation, and sophisticated alternative to commercial popular music. Minority taste, perhaps, but culturally significant, influencing future music and representing American creativity's highest aspirations. 78. Rise of doo-wop groups. Doo-wop groups represented 1950s street corner harmonies, transformed into commercial success, creating distinctive vocal style, emphasizing group singing, nonsense syllables, and romantic lyrics, appealing to teenagers across racial boundaries. Groups formed in urban neighborhoods, primarily Black and Latino youth, singing on corners, in subway stations, under streetlights, or school hallways. The style required no instruments, just voices, creating rhythms, bass lines, and harmonies. Lead singers handled melodies while background singers provided supporting vocals using sounds like doo-wop, sha-na-na, dip-dip, and other syllables, creating rhythmic and harmonic foundations. Successful groups included the Platters, the Drifters, Frankie Lyman, and the Teenagers, the Penguins, the Flamingos, and dozens more. Songs typically address teenage concerns, first love, heartbreak, longing, devotion, in simple, emotionally direct lyrics. Earth Angel, Why Do Fools Fall in Love, In the Still of the Night, and The Great Pretender became enduring classics. Doo-wop's accessibility meant any group of friends could form vocal groups, practicing harmonies and developing repertoires. Record companies signed groups regularly, seeking next hits. Success was often brief. One-hit wonders were common, though some groups achieved lasting careers. Doo-wop crossed racial boundaries more successfully than some music white teenagers embraced. Black groups, though white doo-wop groups also emerged. The music influenced rock and roll significantly. Many early rock songs incorporated doo-wop elements. Doo-wop represented democratic music making, poor urban youth without instruments creating commercially successful art through voices alone. It embodied youth culture's creative energy, proving that talent, harmony, and dedication could overcome economic limitations. The style remained influential, with later groups reviving and honoring doo-wop traditions, recognizing its significance as distinctively American vocal music, combining African-American gospel, rhythm and blues, Italian operatic influences, and adolescent romanticism. 79. American Bandstand debut. American Bandstand debuted nationally on ABC in August 1957, revolutionizing popular music exposure, teenage culture, and television programming. Dick Clark hosted this Philadelphia-based afternoon program featuring teenagers dancing to recorded music, occasional live performances, and record reviews. The show's format was deceptively simple. Teenagers danced while cameras captured them. Clark interviewed dancers and musicians, and viewers watched from home. However, its cultural impact was enormous. American Bandstand provided national platform for rock and roll, legitimizing music many adults considered dangerous. Artists like Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, Buddy Holly, and countless others performed, reaching millions of viewers simultaneously. The show launched careers, established hits, and influenced fashion and dance trends nationwide. Regular teenage dancers became minor celebrities. Justine Corelli, Bob Clayton, and others gained recognition, receiving fan mail and becoming style influencers. Viewers studied dancers' clothing, hairstyles, and moves, imitating them in their own schools and towns. The Rate a Record segment had teenagers evaluate new songs on danceability and listenability, democratic music criticism by target audiences. Dick Clark became powerful industry figure, affable, clean-cut, reassuring adults that rock and roll wasn't entirely threatening while simultaneously promoting it effectively. The show initially featured racially integrated audiences, relatively progressive for the time, though not without compromises. American Bandstand homogenized rock and roll somewhat, emphasizing cleaner, safer versions while maintaining enough edge to satisfy teenagers. It represented television's growing cultural power, defining trends, creating stars, and unifying geographically dispersed teenagers into national youth culture. The show continued for decades, but its 50s debut marked a significant moment when rock and roll achieved mainstream media presence. Television recognized teenagers as distinct audience, and popular culture became increasingly youth-focused. 80. Dance crazes, the stroll, the twist. Dance crazes swept through 1950s youth culture with remarkable speed and intensity, creating synchronized national phenomena through television exposure, peer pressure, and teenagers' eagerness for shared cultural experiences expressing identity and rebellion. The stroll emerged around 1957, becoming one of the decade's signature dances. Performed in lines, boys on one side, girls opposite couples took turns, strolling down the center, while others clapped and swayed rhythmically. The dance combined simplicity with performance opportunity. Individual couples showcased their moves while maintaining group participation. American Bandstand popularized the stroll nationally, with teenagers across America replicating what they saw on television screens. The twist arrived late in the decade, introduced by Chubby Checker in 1959, though truly exploding in the early 60s. This revolutionary dance eliminated partner requirements. Individuals twisted their bodies independently, moving hips and arms as if drying their backs with towels while stubbing out cigarettes with feet. The twist's lack of physical contact seemed innocent yet was remarkably sensual, involving isolated hip movements that scandalized some adults while captivating teenagers. Other crazes included the hand-jive rhythmic hand-clapping patterns performed while sitting or standing, and variations of the jitterbug adapted to rock and roll tempos. These dances spread virally through schools, youth centers, and teen gatherings. Mastering current dances determined social status. Skilled dancers gained admiration, while awkward ones faced embarrassment. Dance crazes represented youth culture's power to create and disseminate trends independently of adult approval. They provided structured ways to move to rock and roll's unfamiliar rhythms while allowing individual expression within communal frameworks. These dances embodied 50s contradictions, conformity, everyone doing identical moves, and individuality, personal style variations, innocence and sexuality, structure and freedom. They created shared generational experiences, physical expressions of rock and roll's energy, and visible markers of youth culture, establishing distinct identity separate from parental generations, communicating through bodies what words couldn't adequately express about teenage feelings, desires, and emerging cultural autonomy. 81. Neighborhood block parties. Neighborhood block parties epitomized 1950s community spirit, with entire streets closing for celebrations featuring potluck meals, games, and socializing. Residents pooled resources, creating communal feasts on tables spanning sidewalks. Children played organized games, three-legged races, egg tosses, potato sack races, while adults chatted, strengthening neighborhood bonds. Local musicians provided entertainment. Dancing occurred spontaneously. These gatherings celebrated holidays, summer evenings, or simply community itself. Block parties fostered belonging, teaching children about cooperation and shared spaces. They represented ideal suburban community neighbors, knowing each other, caring collectively, creating safe environments where children roamed freely and adults maintained informal surveillance networks, embodying post-war optimism about community life and American togetherness. 82. Church picnics and socials. Church gatherings extended beyond Sunday worship during the 1950s, with picnics and socials strengthening congregational bonds and providing wholesome entertainment. Churches organized summer picnics at parks featuring potluck spreads, softball games, and fellowship. Social halls hosted ice cream socials, bingo nights, and seasonal celebrations. These events built community among members, provided youth activities, and reinforced religious values through informal interaction. Families dressed nicely, contributing homemade dishes, showcasing cooking skills. Churches served as community centers beyond spiritual guidance, offering social infrastructure particularly important in new suburban developments where residents lacked established networks. These gatherings combined faith, food, and friendship, creating inclusive environments where all ages participated, strengthening religious communities while providing entertainment alternatives to secular commercial culture. 83. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Scouting organizations thrived during the 1950s, teaching millions of children outdoor skills, citizenship, and character development through structured programs, emphasizing service and achievement. Boy Scouts camped, hiked, learned fire building and knot tying, earning merit badges demonstrating competencies. Girl Scouts focused on homemaking, outdoor skills, and community service, selling cookies to fund activities. Both organizations emphasized patriotism, moral development, and leadership. Weekly meetings in church basements or schoolrooms featured skill lessons, games, and planning. Uniforms: khaki for Boy Scouts, green for Girl Scouts, created visible identity and pride. Scouting provided supervised activities, adult mentorship, and achievement structures through rank advancement. These organizations prepared children for responsible adulthood while teaching cooperation, self-reliance, and civic duty. 84. Girl and Boys Clubs. Boys and Girls Clubs provided 1950s urban youth with safe recreational spaces, supervision, and programming preventing delinquency while promoting positive development. These organizations offered sports, arts, educational support, and character development in dedicated facilities staffed by trained professionals. Membership fees were minimal or waived, ensuring access regardless of economic circumstances. Clubs provided alternatives to street life, particularly in working-class neighborhoods where supervision was limited. Basketball courts, game rooms, workshops, and meeting spaces offered structured activities. Volunteers and staff mentored members, teaching skills and values. These clubs emphasized citizenship, health, and responsibility. For many children, particularly those from single-parent or struggling families, clubs provided stability, guidance, and opportunities otherwise unavailable, demonstrating community investment in youth welfare. 85. Door-to-door salesmen. Door-to-door salesmen were ubiquitous in 1950s neighborhoods, selling encyclopedias, vacuum cleaners, brushes, cosmetics, and countless products directly to homemakers. These persistent entrepreneurs knocked on doors, delivering practice pitches demonstrating product benefits. Fuller brush men, Avon ladies, and encyclopedia salespeople became familiar neighborhood figures. Housewives sometimes welcomed the adult conversation, others found interruptions annoying. High-pressure tactics convinced families to purchase beyond their means, though many products were legitimate and useful. This distribution method reflected era's demographics. Homebound wives with purchasing power, limited retail options, and trust in personal interaction. Door-to-door sales provided employment for determined workers, while bringing commerce directly to consumers, representing personal retail relationships before impersonal mass marketing dominated. 86. Paper routes for kids. Paper routes provided 1950s boys with first employment, teaching responsibility, money management, and work ethic through daily newspaper delivery. Young teenagers woke before dawn, loading canvas bags with folded newspapers, then bicycled through neighborhoods tossing papers onto porches. Routes required reliability, customers expected timely delivery regardless of weather. Boys collected subscription payments weekly or monthly, learning bookkeeping and customer service. Earnings, perhaps $10 to $15, weekly funded personal expenses and savings. Paper routes taught time management, physical endurance, and accountability. Some boys maintained routes for years, building nest eggs for college or cars. This job represented childhood entrepreneurship and independence, though it exploited cheap labor. Parents valued the character-building experience, viewing early employment as maturity development. 87. Volunteering and civic clubs. Civic engagement thrived during the 1950s through volunteer organizations and service clubs promoting community improvement and social connection. Rotary, Lions, Kiwanis, and Elks clubs attracted business and professional men committed to service projects, networking, and civic betterment. Women joined junior league, garden clubs, and charitable organizations. Volunteers staffed hospitals, libraries, and schools. Community fundraisers supported local causes, building playgrounds, funding scholarships, assisting needy families. This participation reflected social expectations, particularly for middle-class citizens, about civic responsibility and community contribution. Membership provided social status, business connections, and purpose beyond family and work. These organizations built social capital, strengthened communities, and addressed needs before extensive government services existed. Civic participation represented good citizenship and community investment. 88. Saturday shopping downtown. Saturday downtown shopping trips were significant 1950s weekly rituals, with families traveling to urban commercial districts for purchases, errands, and entertainment. Department stores, specialty shops, movie theaters, and restaurants lined bustling streets filled with pedestrians. Women wore dresses, gloves, and hats. Children dressed nicely. Families browsed merchandise, made purchases, ate lunch at department store tea rooms or local diners, perhaps attending matinee movies. Downtown represented urban sophistication and commercial abundance. Storefront windows displayed elaborate merchandise arrangements. Street life was vibrant, shoppers, businesspeople, vendors creating energy absent from suburban landscapes. These trips combined necessity and pleasure, teaching children consumer culture and urban navigation. Though suburban malls eventually displaced downtown shopping, 50s downtowns remained vital commercial and social centers. 89. Soda shop hangouts. Soda shops and malt shops served as crucial 1950s teenage gathering places, providing supervised yet parent-free social environments where youth culture flourished. These establishments featured counter-seating, booths, jukeboxes, and soda fountains, serving milkshakes, malteds, sodas, and sundaes. Teenagers arrived after school, occupying booths for hours over single purchases, talking, flirting, gossiping, and listening to music. Soda jerks served drinks while monitoring behavior. These spaces allowed teenage autonomy within acceptable boundaries, public locations with adult presence but minimal interference. Romance blossomed over shared malts. Friendships solidified through regular meetings. Social hierarchies became visible through seating arrangements. Soda shops represented youth culture, geography, distinct from home and school, belonging to teenagers. They provided entertainment, socialization, and identity formation spaces essential for adolescent development. 90. Family vacations by car. Automobile vacations became 1950s family traditions, with millions piling into cars for cross-country adventures, exploring America's landscapes, attractions, and highway culture. Station wagons loaded with luggage, coolers, and children headed toward national parks, beaches, historical sites, or relatives' homes. Roadside motels, mom-and-pop operations with neon signs advertising vacancy and color TV provided nightly accommodations. Families ate at diners and roadside restaurants, visited tourist traps and souvenir shops. Car games, sing-alongs, and sibling squabbles filled hours. These trips created family memories, taught geography and history experientially, and represented prosperity, leisure time, discretionary income, automobile ownership converging. Vacations emphasized togetherness, adventure, and American mobility, embodying freedom to explore the continent's vastness via interstate highways and personal vehicles. 91. Disneyland opening in 1955. Disneyland's July 1955 opening in Anaheim, California, revolutionized entertainment, creating the modern theme park concept combining rides, attractions, dining, and immersive storytelling. Walt Disney's vision transformed orange groves into magical kingdom featuring themed lands: Fantasyland, Tomorrowland, Frontierland, Adventureland, Main Street, USA. Opening day attracted massive crowds and celebrities despite technical disasters. Disneyland quickly became an iconic destination, drawing millions annually. Families planned pilgrimages, experiencing rides like Matterhorn, bobsleds, Jungle Cruise, and Peter Pan's Flight. The park represented American optimism, technological achievement, and childhood wonder, commercialized perfectly. Television's Disneyland program promoted the park weekly. Disneyland established entertainment standards, proving themed experiences could generate enormous profits while providing family entertainment. It symbolized 50s prosperity and imagination. 92. First, McDonald's restaurant. Ray Kroc franchised McDonald's in 1955, transforming Dick and Mac McDonald's California hamburger stand into global fast food empire, revolutionizing American dining. The standardized system, limited menu, assembly line preparation, quick service, rock-bottom prices attracted families seeking convenient, affordable meals. 15-cent hamburgers, 10-cent fries, and 20-cent milkshakes provided incredible value. Golden arches became instantly recognizable. McDonald's emphasized cleanliness, consistency, and speed. Families ate in cars or at outdoor seating. The concept eliminated waitresses, tipping, and lengthy waits. McDonald's represented modernity, efficiency, and democratic dining. Everyone ate identical food regardless of status. Though initially just beginning its expansion, McDonald's would transform American food culture, proving fast, cheap, standardized food could generate fortunes while reshaping dietary habits. 93. Sputnik launch in 1957. The Soviet Union's October 1957 launch of Sputnik, first artificial satellite, shocked America, triggering space race, educational reforms, and existential anxiety about technological superiority. Americans heard Sputnik's radio beeps, saw it crossing night skies, and panicked about Soviet advancement. The launch challenged American exceptionalism. Soviets achieved space first, suggesting superior science, education, and potentially military capability. Fear drove responses. Massive education investments, emphasizing math and science, accelerated space programs, civil defense intensification. Sputnik represented Cold War's technological dimension, competing systems, proving superiority through achievement. The crisis catalyzed NASA's creation and eventual moon landing, transforming American education and research. Sputnik demonstrated technology's geopolitical significance, motivating generations toward scientific careers and space exploration. 94. Television coverage of major news. Television transformed 1950s news consumption, bringing visual immediacy to events previously experienced through newspapers or radio. Networks expanded news programming. Evening broadcasts featured anchors like Walter Cronkite and Chet Huntley, reporting daily events. Major events received live coverage: political conventions, presidential speeches, disasters. Television's visual power made news visceral. Audiences saw rather than imagined events. This immediacy increased engagement, but also manipulation potential. News became entertainment, with visual appeal influencing coverage decisions. Television united the nation around shared experiences, everyone watching identical broadcasts simultaneously. However, 3 networks controlled information flow, limiting perspectives. Despite limitations, television journalism established authority, with trusted anchors interpreting reality for millions. This transformed public discourse, political communication, and democratic participation fundamentally. 95. Queen Elizabeth II. Coronation coverage. Queen Elizabeth II's June 1953 coronation received unprecedented television coverage, demonstrating the medium's power to unite global audiences around historic events. Despite British authorities' initial resistance, cameras captured the Westminster Abbey ceremony, broadcasting it worldwide. Americans stayed up late watching history unfold. Millions witnessed ancient rituals through modern technology. The coverage lasted hours, with commentators explaining traditions. This marked television's arrival as major news medium, proving it could cover significant events compellingly. The coronation's pageantry, crowns, robes, processions, suited television perfectly. Americans' fascination reflected Anglophilia and curiosity about monarchy. The broadcast demonstrated television transcending geography, creating shared global experiences, and establishing coverage standards for future historic events, proving visual journalism's cultural power. 96. First credit cards. Credit cards emerged during the 1950s, revolutionizing consumer finance and purchasing behavior. Diners Club, introduced in 1950, provided charge cards for restaurant payments. American Express followed in 1958. Bank of America introduced Bank AmeriCard, later Visa, in 1958 in California. These cards allowed purchases without cash, with monthly billing. Initially limited to affluent customers, credit cards gradually democratized, encouraging consumption beyond immediate means. They represented convenience, status, and modern financial tools. However, they also enabled debt accumulation, transforming American relationship with money. Credit cards facilitated consumer economy expansion, making impulse purchases easier and installment buying universal. They symbolize prosperity while creating financial vulnerabilities, establishing credit-based consumption patterns, defining subsequent American economic life and personal finance challenges. 97. Alaska and Hawaii. Joining the Union, Alaska and Hawaii achieved statehood in 1959. Alaska in January, Hawaii in August, expanding the Union to 50 states and adding diverse territories representing strategic, economic, and cultural significance. Alaska brought vast natural resources, strategic Cold War positioning, and frontier symbolism. Hawaii offered Pacific military bases, tourism potential, and multicultural population. Both additions required constitutional amendments and flag redesigns. The 50-star flag debuted July 1960. Statehood debates involved racial considerations. Hawaii's non-white majority challenged assumptions about American identity. Alaska's remoteness raised integration questions. Ultimately, both joined, demonstrating American expansion continuing and diversifying. These additions represented post-war confidence, territorial consolidation, and recognition that America transcended continental boundaries, embracing diverse landscapes and populations within national identity. 98. Civil rights movement beginnings. The civil rights movement gained momentum during the 1950s, challenging segregation and discrimination through legal battles, boycotts, and organized resistance. Brown v. Board of Education, 1954, declared school segregation unconstitutional, though implementation faced massive resistance. Rosa Parks's December 1955 bus boycott in Montgomery sparked year-long protest ending bus segregation. Martin Luther King Jr. emerged as movement leader, advocating nonviolent resistance. Little Rock Nine's 1957 integration of Central High School required federal troops against violent opposition. These events exposed American racism to national and international audiences, pressuring change. The movement represented moral awakening, Black Americans demanding constitutional rights long denied. Though major victories came later, 50s activism laid foundations, demonstrating courage, organization, and persistence necessary for transforming unjust social systems. 99. The Korean War era. Memories. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953, shaped early 1950s consciousness, bringing Cold War tensions into lethal reality. Though less remembered than World War II or Vietnam, Korea sent millions of Americans into brutal conflict defending South Korea against communist invasion. The war produced 50,000 American deaths, countless wounded, and prisoners enduring harsh captivity. Families experienced loss, anxiety, and prolonged separations. The conflict remained officially a police action, never declared war, contributing to its ambiguous legacy. Armistice in 1953 ended fighting but left Korea divided. Veterans returned to indifferent receptions, no victory parades celebrating their sacrifices. Korea represented Cold War's dangerous reality, demonstrating willingness to fight limited wars, preventing communist expansion, establishing military engagement patterns characterizing subsequent decades. 100. Polio vaccine changing childhood health. The polio vaccine's 1955 introduction fundamentally transformed childhood health, eliminating disease that had terrorized generations and demonstrating medical science's power to defeat devastating illnesses. Before vaccination, summers brought polio epidemics, closing public spaces as parents feared invisible contagion. The disease paralyzed thousands annually, filling iron lung wards and creating lifelong disabilities. Jonas Salk's killed virus vaccine, tested in massive 1954 trial, proved safe and effective. Mass vaccination campaigns followed immediately. Schools administered shots, public health departments organized clinics. Within years, polio cases dropped dramatically, from annual epidemics to rare occurrences. This triumph justified faith in scientific progress, medical authority, and public health programs. It saved countless lives, prevented immeasurable suffering, and established vaccination as accepted disease prevention, creating expectations that medical science could solve previously insurmountable health challenges. If these 1950s memories resonated with you, subscribe to continue this nostalgic journey. Join us as we explore the turbulent 1960s, a decade of revolution, innovation, and cultural upheaval that forever changed America. More stories, more memories, and more history await.